please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and the Invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wayne?
Fathers, we gather together. First off, we give thanks for this country that we live in. And our hearts and prayers go to those who are torn, homes are torn by war. Lord, be with us today as we go about the business of the county. Guide us, direct us, all for the betterment of our taxpayers. And on a personal, Lord, please grant some rain for the 83 highway corridor. According to my calendar, it's been 6 months since we've had measurable precipitation, and we'd really like your help on this one, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. It has been a while, Dwayne. It has been a while. Well, welcome, everybody. I appreciate your participation in the opening part of our meeting. A couple of comments under the chair's comments. The first thing I would ask from our commission members, are there any additions or any deletions on the agenda that you would like to make before we start into the meeting? If not, the agenda will be as published and as we have in our hands. Secondly, I'd like to make reference to Dave Jones' family who's here today, 3 of them sitting in the back. I don't know, this isn't church. I'm not sure why they're sitting in the back, but we appreciate the family members being here. And it's I saw Kamala at a gas station in Abilene not long ago, but I hadn't seen Logan for quite some time, and it's really good to see you guys again. And I'm sorry, I forget your first name. Jim, the son-in-law, is also here with them. So appreciate you being here. And
birthday's coming up too in a few days.
you know, I thought he said he was done with birthdays here a few years ago, but
I think Thursday, isn't it?
I think close to that.
but who's counting and who's paying attention to that?
Better than the alternative, Dave.
Well, I had an invitation in a card to do a banana dance or something, but I think I'll forego that today.
But anyhow, we're glad you're here and traveled in to see your dad, and thanks for being here for a few minutes with us today. The second thing that I have on my list today is April is National County Government Month. And we have a resolution that I'm going to read into the record today, and as I do, and then after I do that, we will be, some people got ahead of themselves and signed it early, but we're accepting this proclamation today, and I will make a comment after that about county services. But the title of this County Government Month, and it is a national recognition through our National Association of Counties, and they've titled it this year, Counties Thrive. Whereas the nation's 3,069 counties, parishes, and boroughs serving more than 315 million Americans provide essential services to create healthy, safe, and vibrant communities. And whereas counties provide public health services, administer justice, keep communities safe, foster economic opportunities, and much more. And whereas Finney County and all counties take pride in our responsibility to protect and enhance the health, well-being, and safety of our residents in efficient and cost-effective ways. And whereas, under the leadership of the National Association of Counties President Larry Johnson, NACO is demonstrating how counties thrive, especially in supporting residents and businesses during the coronavirus pandemic. And whereas each year since 1991, the National Association of Counties has encouraged counties across the country to elevate awareness of county responsibilities, programs, and services. And whereas Finney County has adopted NACO's theme, Counties Thrive, by reaffirming our commitment to the citizens to provide a safe and healthy environment to prosper, work, and enjoy. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Finney County, Kansas Board of County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as National County Government Month and encourage all county officials and employees to continue to demonstrate our commitment of excellence in service to the residents of Finney County. Signed and sealed this 4th day of April 2022. The comment I want to make is one thing in my nearly 8 years as a commissioner that I've tried to help remind us as a commission each and every time that we talk about goals, objectives, services, and we're getting into budget time, which we'll start some conversation on that today, is in my orientation session about 8 years ago, we were reminded that we have 6 mandated services as county government officials. And I keep it here in front of me each and every meeting to remind us that those 6 mandated services by statute are public health services, emergency management, solid waste planning, law enforcement and jails, transportation, meaning the roads and bridges in our county, and noxious weed eradication. And so we try to focus as a commission on those mandates, and then what can we do above and beyond those mandates as a county to make this a great place to live and work and raise families and have a business. So I just wanted to add that, but to help people understand better what we try to do here as a county commission and what our county government is all about and what our core things are, services are. And then you'll see behind me some of our values and so forth that we've put in place over the last several years. With that, I would ask if any other county commissioner would like to speak to the value of county government at the beginning of this County Government Month. Okay? If there are no other comments, we'll head into the agenda. And if you would hand that to Dory, please. First thing on the agenda is the consent agenda items. First of all, do you want to leave them all on the consent agenda? And if so, I would accept a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I'd
sir.
offer a motion to approve the consent agenda as published.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Larry. All in favor of the items on the consent agenda being approved, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is public comment. And public comment is a time for people to make comment. There won't be action, discussion, or action for anything that's not on our agenda. If you're here to comment about an agenda item, we'll allow you to do that at the time of that item. But anyone here to make public comment? Anybody want to talk about a birthday of one of the commissioners? Or no, I would, and quite honestly, Logan or Kamala, if you want to make a comment, you're welcome to do that today.
You have to come up here.
And I'm just glad to see you do what your dad tells you. That's
I didn't
impressive.
realize this was going to be such an affair. We're awfully glad to be here to celebrate Dad's 80th birthday, which is on this Thursday, the 7th of April. We couldn't be there for the day, but it's great to see him and see the commission in motion, as he's told us so much about the important work that you guys do and gals do. So thanks for having us, and thanks for taking care of my pop.
Yeah, thank you, Logan.
Yeah, I didn't mention the date.
Yeah.
Or the days.
Only family can do that, Larry. So, any other public comments? If not, then Linda. Well, wait. Yeah, we are at the 8:30 hour, so we're right, pretty much on track. So, Linda, if you'd lead us off on the public hearing for Northwest Development dissolution.
Thank you. I think the first appropriate step is to request and ask if anyone in present this morning wishes to make any comment with regard to the dissolution of Northwest Industrial District.
And I will ask for that, but as I do, E.C. Brookover was with us virtually the last time. I assume he realizes also that this hearing is happening this morning. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the Northwest Development dissolution?
Commissioner Pitchney, I think you need to make a
go into-
formal opening for the public
Public
comment.
hearing. Thank you. I appreciate the guidance. I certainly do. So is there a motion to open public hearing for the dissolution of Northwest Industrial Development?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded to go into public hearing for that, and thank you for the guidance again. And all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. We are now in the public hearing, and is there anyone in the audience who would like to make comment to the dissolution of that development? And that could include staff as well, if staff has comments in this public hearing portion. No comments at this point? Okay. All right, then we'll close the public hearing portion and then head into the business portion of this dissolution issue.
Thank you. And just as a note of guidance, at this point, the commissioners will need to take a formal vote about whether or not after public hearing, they still wish to proceed with the dissolution. The Northwest Industrial District will have a separate meeting where they determine the same. Once those two meetings occur, so hopefully, presumably at the next commission meeting, you'll be passing a resolution or voting on a resolution to determine finally the dissolution of the Northwest Industrial District.
So today's motion, if the board is amenable to it, is to proceed with the dissolution. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would make that motion.
To proceed with dissolution of the Northwest Industrial Development.
I'll second.
And there is a second. Discussion by board members.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
not a discussion, but for the public, upon the dissolution, suddenly Finney County will be responsible for the infrastructure.
Correct.
And so that's clear, there's a design behind everybody desiring for this dissolution, and that's to allow expansion into the area of that, that part of the county for other commercial and residential enterprises. But we will suddenly have a little bit of additional road responsibility for our road and bridge department, as well as some stormwater and sewer responsibility. So,
And those statements are all correct. Anything else from staff perspective?
Just to add on to Commissioner Dave Jones's comments is that the county will then need to create a sewer improvement district there to take over the operations of that specifically. So in essence, then you'll go through the standard process for creating those sewer improvement district, which in essence will require the current landowners of the industrial district to sign off on a petition for that creation. And county staff will work trying to get that pulled together prior to your resolution to dissolve it.
And
Chairman.
that would take place after the development agrees to dissolve, correct? The sewer district and all that stuff.
The industrial district then would, yes, it would follow the passage of that resolution, but you would need that petition in front of you prior to that, so we'll
Okay.
just have a
Okay.
transition there that's appropriate.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out steps 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay.
just one little comment. I have the pleasure of taking my family, who were raised here but have been gone for years. We went for a tour, including that area, but as I pointed out to them, and I'll point out to those who in the earshot of our conversation, this is a decision that we're considering today that will have an impact for the next 20 or 25 years down the road as the county develops. And so these decisions are made with a lot of thought and not made lightly. So thank you.
Okay, so everyone understands today the motion is to proceed with the dissolution of the development, and that's the motion that's on the table with a second. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Motion passes. So let's proceed. And we don't know yet when the Development Board will have its meeting to decide. Okay,
Would you like a motion,
just,
I'm sorry, would you like a motion to close your hearing? I'll offer that.
no, I just closed it by chairman announcement. So, am I correct on that? That we don't have that date set yet? Okay, yeah, okay, all right. All right, we'll move into, is Alicia here, or, I saw Trent, so Trent's filling in today for Alicia?
That is correct.
Okay, on some rezoning of properties.
Yes, good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. For your consideration today, we have a rezone for the property generally located at 7855 North Anderson Road. I think it's actually Anders Road. Is that right? Right. Anders Road? Anderson Road. Okay, we've got a misspelling on here. All right, the applicant, Omar Mendez Oquin, is requesting to rezone the property generally located at 7855 North Anderson Road, Finney County, Kansas, from agricultural district to rural residential. The property is currently vacant, and the property and the applicant plans to use it as residential. The governing body may approve the request according to the criteria in the section 27.040. Below is a complete list of that criteria. This property has approximately 5 acres. The Planning Commission did meet on this. 5 members present, 5 members voted in favor of it. Alternatives for the commission today: number 1, to adopt the Planning Commission's recommendation by approval of the proposed ordinance. 2, override the Planning Commission's recommendation by a 2/3 majority vote. 3, return the recommendation to the Planning Commission with a statement specifying the basis for the governing body's failure to approve or disapprove. Staff's recommendation is alternative number 1. And we've got the applicant in the office, or not in the, well, in our official, we'll call this an office, in the audience today. So if you have any questions to him or anyone else.
I was going to ask 2 things, and then we'll open it up to the commissioners. And I'm doing this for the people who are joining us virtually. The Planning Commission voted to approve.
Correct.
Was there any discussion from your perspective that needs to be highlighted for those who are not present or don't have the documents that we have and so forth?
No, I think there was some discussion from private parties associated with the property as far as more of almost like a civil issue, being taken out of the maybe ag use and put into residential use. But no, everything else seems to be in perfect order.
And then, Omar, is that correct? Do you have any additional comments from what you made at the Planning Commission and anything that you think would help with our decision here today? Yeah, we just need you at the microphone for those who are online.
I'm just planning to build my future home residence. They call it barn dominium, custom home, hobby shop. You know, I got 5 acres, up to 15 unoperable cars I could have. Honestly, I only need one 58 Impala, so that's all I'm planning on doing.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments before we take action? And let's see. We don't do a resolution for this, or do we do a resolution for this? I forget.
This would be a resolution,
Yeah, and the number is
2022.
20-2022?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I will offer a motion to approve that resolution number for the rezone.
2022, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bob. Any further, or any discussion? If not, all in favor of approving Resolution 20-2022, please say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Glad to help you out, Omar. And then, Trent, you got another one. This is on a partial plat, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct. This is the Kyle Leitner edition. here in Finney County. On behalf of Kyle Leitner, Cornerstone Professional Services is requesting to plat the Kyle Leitner addition. The property is generally located at 3075 East Plymouth Road, Finney County, Kansas. Lot 1, Block 1 contains approximately 16.26 acres, and the property is zoned A Agricultural District. The property owner is parceling off the land to sell the surrounding property. A single-family home on the property serves as the owner's primary residence. The first submittal was presented for plat review on February 23rd, 2022. No major concerns were declared. When this was taken to Planning Commission, the 5 that were present, all 5 voted in favor of this. Alternatives, governing body may approve the plat. The governing body may not approve the plat. Staff's recommendation is number 1, approval of the plat.
And similar questions to what I had before, Trent, with regard to the discussion at the Planning Commission for those who don't have the documentation we have.
Yeah, so this is just a triangle portion of some ag land. There was no major points of concerns or discussions that came from that. This is at the intersection of Leitner and Plymouth Road.
Okay, and do we have anyone with us today that has comments pro or con to this? Trent,
I do not believe so, but
you are aware of anyone that wants to speak to this replat? All right, hearing or seeing none.
I'll make the motion that we replat the Kyle Leitner parcel.
And is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Dwayne. Now, any discussion or comments from the commissioners? Yes, Dwayne. Go ahead.
I just have a comment, reading through my
Oh, this is
packet.
a replat,
There was quite a bit of discussion on
or partial plat. Partial plat.
on the packet, on the inspections and follow-up with complaints and things like that. I would like in the future to address some of those concerns and how we could improve enforcement of our programs we have out there.
are you referring to the code enforcement question? Yeah. And as expressed last time, as far as creating a group to meet and discuss how we can improve or change that, we can certainly do so.
Exactly.
I think there's enough interest in at least addressing the subject and see if it needs to be done differently or not. So
You bet.
we have a motion. It's been seconded to approve the partial plat for the Kyle Leitner addition. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Trent.
You bet.
Now, are you, oh, no.
One more for you.
Yeah, you're doing the waiver as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
All right, so this is a waiver request at 1541 South Raceway Road. This is from section 23.80, subsection 2, regarding residential design manufactured home, RDMH standards for this 1541 South Raceway. Jamie L. Mock, GM of Shocker Homes LLC, on behalf of the property owners at 1541 South Raceway Road, is requesting a waiver from the section 23.80, subsection 2 of the Finney County zoning regulations to install a manufactured home with a metal roof. The property is zoned LR, Low Density Residential District. Since the property is separated and owned by the individual and not in a manufactured home park, it requires the home to a residential design manufactured home standard instead of the typical manufactured home. The homeowner has already purchased the home, as you see in your packet and on the attached photos, and the home is sitting on the property. The property currently has a permanent foundation installed that the home will sit on. The applicant plans to finish off the roof with guttering to meet the eave projection as outlined. Below is a full list of the requirements of the residential design manufactured home. Staff has researched other surrounding jurisdictions that have residential design manufactured home standards and confirmed that Finney County regulations are consistent with them. Alternatives, alternative number 1, the governing body may approve the waiver, and alternative number 2, the governing body may not approve the waiver. Staff is unable to recommend approval of the waiver, and I'm not sure if we have a representative from the owner or Shocker Homes here with us.
I'm here from Shopper Homes.
Oh, yeah. Would you come, either or both of you come to the podium and say name and so forth and speak to why you think we should approve this waiver?
I'm Jamie with Shocker Homes in Augusta, Kansas, and the end product is not an unsightly product at all. And as far as end use and longevity of the construction, it's a lot better than just a standard 3-tab shingle, which would be the alternative to that. So that's why I would recommend just waiving that, and maybe even considering it long-term with maybe some guidelines for the type of metal roof you would use.
Okay, thank you. Any questions to her before she sits down?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Dave.
I have to agree with this lady. I don't see any problem, and why we have this restriction is beyond me. It's something that I would encourage us to take a look at. Can we take it clear out of the book? On Fleming Street in Garden City, 2701 Fleming, is a beautiful ranch-style home here in town that has a metal roof. And I can name you a dozen others, but that one comes to mind because I drive by it every day. And to me, it's far more appealing to see that roof than something with the shingles blown off, and some, as we see in some parts of town. So when it's time for a commissioner to vote on this, I'm going to support allowing them to have their metal roof.
If I may just insert something right here. Alicia contacted me about this situation because for this very reason, she felt, and after looking at it, we felt that maybe our regulations were outdated and not taking into account this type of roof when they were adopted, and it is probably something to look at in the future, but we have had some discussions about updating that in the future for that reason.
I don't know whether it was a material of the roofing or the appearance that was in conflict at some point, but Leandro roofs, if you know what those are, it's a very, very artistic looking roof. Those actually are metal. And so if it's a material, we're way outdated. So anyway, enough said.
I think you can go ahead and send it, but thank you for your comments. We appreciate that. So is there anyone in the audience that would speak on the opposite side of this issue as far as thinking that we should not approve this waiver? Is there anyone on that side of the fence, if you will? If not, I would entertain thoughts from the commission, either comments or a motion.
I would offer the motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve.
That we waive that requirement.
Yeah, we waive the requirement. And frankly, I'm going to make a little side statement, not part of the motion, but why we have an eave requirement, because we have homes around without eaves on them. But so be it. Let's approve it so these folks can get their house on the foundation and get moved into it and get on with life.
So we have a motion on the floor to waive the zoning regulations, section 23.008, parenthesis 2. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
And seconded by Bob. Discussion by the board.
Does this motion then waive that stipulation from now on, or just in this case?
Just for this specific case.
So if we want to go back and say, Trent, let's go rethink these regulations, is that a different topic for a different time?
It needs to go
Okay.
to the
That is
planning
correct.
commission.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, it would start with Trent's office, but it would go through a process.
Because I would agree with Dave, there are many houses, and it's not only the Leandro roof, but also a roofing system. I know at Southwind, there are several metal roofs now that are basically look like shake-type shingles, but are metal, so.
Yeah, if I may just interject one thing. I think, and this, when we surveyed the other cities, I think it is old regulation. They were trying to
They did
put language in there
corrugated
that would
tin.
separate it from a standard mobile home, which were typical a roll or metal roof. Metals have changed quite a bit, so I don't think it's unreasonable or wrong to look at that.
Okay.
But I understand why you took the position you did as development, neighborhood and development, because you have the regulations in front of you, so. Any further discussion? If not, all of those in favor of the waiver for this regulation, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes, so that can.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Yeah. Okay, Dave, I think you're on the agenda next. I think we have a couple of library board appointments that we need to consider.
We do. We had, they have a 4-year term and a term limit of 2 terms. And so Claudia Ward, bless her heart, has been a servant for the county on that board for 8 years plus. But she is, by a term limit requirement, needing to step down. Christine Leitner, who has done an outstanding job as chairperson, would like to not be reappointed or reelected, and she would like to spend time with family. So they solicited some community input, have three people who expressed either an interest or a willingness to serve, and you have those 3 names in your packet, and I don't have those right here before me, but we'll get my computer went blank on me.
Well, and I don't have the names right here in front of me.
Jay,
Yeah, Jay Cook was one.
Jay
Paula
Cook,
Kimball was one, and,
yeah,
I can't remember the third.
so
Rebecca Price.
Yes.
Rebecca Price, right.
So these, and remind us, if you did say it, I got distracted by the conversation going on. Remind us, how many members on the board total?
Well, I'm serving as an ex officio member by statute, and then there is a 5-person board.
Five members, so these are 2 out of the 5
Correct.
that we're approving. Okay, all right. And,
One of the board members is term limited out, so.
right, and I did understand that. So, we've got 3 candidates or 3 willing participants for 2 spots. So
That's
what
correct,
is- What is the board's desire?
Mr. Chairman, I'm glad to see we had this much interest in the library board. I would move that we appoint Rebecca Price and, where's the other one? I'm scrolling through here.
All right, the other lady?
Yes.
Kimball.
Kimbrough.
Yes. Those 2.
Okay, he's made a motion, he being Larry, made a motion to appoint Paula Kimbrough and Rebecca Price to the library board, and these would be, again, to repeat, 4-year terms.
That's correct. And I'll second Larry's motion and point out that those folks all have involvement in the library with kids' programs and so on.
Right, exactly, so. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Hey, I know Jay quite well, and Jay lives down there. So,
And that's, yeah, we would encourage him to keep his name on the list, so.
There will be another one opening, I'm sure.
yours?
No, I'm off.
Dwayne, would you please, the motion was made by Larry, the second by you, and that the approval to
we'll
give
get
to
her
Dory
caught
when
up
she
here.
comes back, because I felt like I did everything correct on that last one, but I guess there's some people that think I didn't, so. I did ask for people who had opposition to it.
No.
I,
Said on the other side of the fence. I used that phrase.
right, but I think they wanted to speak to the rezoning on the first. So I think that would have been 2022
2.
on the Anderson Road.
And I was asking for comments from anybody in the audience for all of those. I believe, I believe I asked for comments from the audience for all 3 of these things that we acted on. I didn't necessarily say pro or con, but I asked for input from anyone in the audience on any of these 3. I think we could go back and. Not during the vote, though.
let's finish this
Confusion
one.
on which one you were here to address. On the rezoning on Anderson Road. Yes. Is that correct? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can we go ahead and vote on the library one, and then we'll have that one behind us, and then do this one?
Okay, yeah, I guess we didn't.
We did vote. It was a nay,
I thought we did vote.
so
Okay.
That's why I
two
asked
nays.
Dave to record.
Larry motioned and I seconded.
What we will do. Yeah. What we will do is we will, reopen the discussion, and then if we need to reconsider the vote, we can do that. But I apologize if you didn't hear me or didn't understand me, but I was asking for input from anyone in the audience. So, on FC 2022-16, we will entertain your comments. So come to the podium, introduce yourselves, so for the record, and then speak to what you would like to see.
Well, I'm Jewel Richmeyer, and I do know that I had communication with Dory. I think that's how you say her name.
That's why I'm pretty sure I asked for comments.
And I know you addressed Omar, and then I felt like the discussion was closed. I didn't hear you say that there was public comment. I heard you address Omar. I'm first going to provide to Dory to provide to you guys some pictures that will go through what we've experienced, that I don't just consider a civil suit. As was stated by the Planning Commission, and I look at the words you have out here, for example, stewardship and integrity. So I come before you, and some of you know me, I'm usually pretty confident. I'm really passionate about this, so, as with my husband and other of our neighboring property owners. I come before you to ask you to reconsider the Planning Commission recommendation for rezone. And reading your mission statement, as on your website, it says you're dedicated to its citizens, serving its taxpayers. So here we are talking about FC 2022-16 rezone at 7855 North Anderson Road for Mr. Omar. Most of you sitting here know our family. We're fourth-generation farmers, and we're proudly located and farming in Finney County. I present to you the following questions for consideration. What are the rules for a rezone in Finney County, specifically in the Ag District? Today you're presented with, and you've already voted on, an AG Agricultural District rezone to RR Residential District rezone. I truly believe this should be reconsidered for this application and should be revisited. Additionally, what are the rules for the future to protect ag property from this happening over and over again? The facts are, Mr. Martin Esser sold ag ground knowingly to Mr. Omar, promising it wouldn't be an issue having it rezoned from ag to RR Residential District. I truly believe we need a baseline policy for deeding 5 acres. Do the rules apply to everyone, family members, ag families with 40 acres? Can somebody just deed 5 acres all day long? I don't have any clarity as to what the rules are or what the policies are. And are the rules for thee and not for me? It's been very hard communicating with these people. The history. We purchased the ag property, Kenneth Thomas ground, in 2003. It was our first buy. We farmed for the Garden City Company. This was our first purchase as Randy and Jewel Richmeyer. Mr. Thomas deeded his son, Mike Thomas, 5 acres, not once but twice, out of the 40 acres. There's a pre-existing homestead that was already on the property. It was probably built in the 60s where all of their children grew up. And then Mike Thomas built his home on one of the 5 acres. Then he sold the property. Then he held out the 5 acres from the 23 acres that went up for sale. and he said that it was deeded to himself. We didn't really, his father was passed away. He didn't build a home on that second 5 acres. And then he sold the property through Mr. Nusser, and I feel like it was manipulated and misleading to Mr. Omar on Mr. Omar's behalf. With this policy, there was a minimum of 40 acres. We've been told that. I think I had a conversation with Larry Jones, when we were when our son was building his home. We had the 40 acres of property. We had it surveyed out for the 5 acres that our son needed to do to build his home. Okay, so we did everything that we were told to do for the ag property, rezoning, ordinances, protections for the surrounding areas and owners. Is it your desire as this commission to change the landscape of our agricultural environment? Now, within 1,000 feet of our property, we have a new owner that has shown that he's habitually using guns and now has a gun range, as you will see provided in the pictures. And now he's disposing of tires, which have been stacked very high. He has vehicles coming in and out of the mentioned area, not to mention there was a fire. And I've also provided pictures of when the Finney County Fire Department came. It took them
About 1 minute yet, Jill.
I have 1 minute left?
Approximately.
Okay, so here's the thing. There's landowners out there, they have sheep grazing. This is the Schweers. Let me present to you many concerns that we have. When we're out there changing noddles, fertilizer, whatever, he's out there shooting guns, setting things on fire. This was sold as agricultural land, and now we have this caveat to rezone it. So I'm representing several families: Schweers, Messengers, Pfeiffers, Funk, Roth, Mai, and Romy, just to name a few, that are not just within the 1,000 feet, but we are in the community. So I just fear that there's a big reason that this needs to be reconsidered. We need to be the change. And I'm sorry that Mr. Omar sold this property. We farm, here's his 5 acres, as you'll see in the diagram, and we farm what's north of it, and we farm what's south of it. And it's surrounded by livestock, it's surrounded by farmers that are doing agricultural work, and he has been negligent beyond reason. I don't believe this is a civil situation. I believe this property was sold to him thinking he could do this. He has said that he's going to have it rezoned, shoot guns, set fires, stockpile tires, and build a shop house to do auto and truck repairs. I'm not willing to risk any damages to our ag property.
Jill, thank you. I want to say a couple of things very quickly. First of all, I apologize for the misunderstanding. My intent was to hear comments on both sides of the issue, and I thought, even though I addressed him because he was the applicant and I knew he was sitting here on the front row, I didn't know who else were the people wanting to address the other side. I was alerted to that there were people who wanted to speak, and I thought I had invited anyone in the audience to do that. So I apologize, and we're online and public, and please accept my apology for that if you felt I didn't include you. Secondly, if I read all of the documentation that we received for this meeting, everything that you're saying to us this morning was said to the Planning Commission. Am I correct on that? Because we have the minutes of the Planning Commission, and it appears that was part of their consideration before they sent to us their 5-0 vote. Am I correct on that?
I would say outside of the gun range design itself, with the tire setup and that sort of thing, that was not discussed, other than firearms being discharged and a fire set.
So
Alicia was going to go look at the property. We were supposed to be contacted because she was not aware there was a gun range out there now with the 20 feet stacked tires that you have pictures of, and we never, which.
I guess at the end of the day, if he wants to build a home, we understand that. But to me, you got to have some sort of guidelines on 5 acres out there to do or not to do. I know it's county. There's no county ordinance or covering on shooting off firearms, which I understand, but within 5 acres, I think there probably needs to be something moving forward.
But you believe some of that evidence came to light after the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to send this to us?
We talked about, the only thing there is public complaint, and enforce what? There's nothing to enforce.
Yeah, Yeah, we're complaint-driven on code enforcement, and that's part of what Dave was saying to Trent a little bit ago. Yeah, we're needing to revisit that, so.
Okay, well, I heard Dwayne mention something about the whole thing.
Or Dwayne said that, I'm sorry, I pointed
he
the
heard
wrong one.
We do
Yeah,
need to
Dwayne
work
said
on our
that.
Code
Yeah.
enforcement.
Yeah, and we have instructed Trent to start working on that piece of it, so. Okay, thank you very much. Trent, I know you didn't hear all the comments that they made, but they're in line with the comments that they made at the Planning Commission. We're revisiting the Omar request for the rezoning.
No, yeah, I wasn't at the planning commission with Alicia out. I didn't know, I've never met them before, so otherwise would have alerted to that. As far as the discussion, Linda might be able to speak more of the rights. Just one thing to address with the code enforcement. So we need specific language on code enforcement, whether complaint or proactive enforcement, and even what that looks like. But if it's tire stacked, if that's a violation, yes. If it's shooting firearms, that might be more of something to address with the sheriff's office versus our code enforcement. So there's probably multiple concerns that they have. Not all would be addressed with the code enforcement officer.
Okay, thank you for that. With that, I would ask the board whether there's an appetite, if you will, to reconsider this, and if there is, we would need to rescind our first motion and vote on a second motion. What is the desire of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I can understand the concern of the Richmeyers, but on the other hand, we're about 2,200 houses, homes short in this county, trying to figure out every way in the world to have affordable home housing. And so I'm hard pressed to say let's overrule a decision we just made. If there's a compliance issue with neighborhood peace and quiet, we need to address that, but not keep somebody from building a home. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, Larry?
Well, I think there was some new information presented to us that wasn't presented to the Planning Commission. And if that's the case, I think that they should bring this issue back up to the Planning Commission and let them rehear it again with all interested parties there. Sounds to me like there wasn't hardly anybody in attendance at the meeting.
Yeah, and that, I mean, we know we had the 5 commissions there, but as far as if it's the shooting of the guns or whatever was new brought up here, you know, again, you're looking at criteria 27.040. Does it fit within that criteria or does it not? If it's someone shooting guns, that's happening all over the county. Now we need to look at how are we going to address it. If it's stacking tires, that could be easily cited on a violation on the enforcement side. So I think and Linda may speak more to this, but my advice or counsel would be to focus on the factual data and not the enforcement. We can work on the enforcement if there's things that need to be looked at, but is it legal for someone to build a home on here? And that's really what we're here for. If they're doing something illegal out there now, that should be addressed now, no matter what the zoning is.
And Larry, and this is not in disagreement, but there's a long narrative in the minutes with regard to many of the things that Jewel expressed here to us today. Now, does that mean there was a point or two missed in that? I'm not going to say there isn't.
I don't know about, it seems to me like you had 3 members short on the Planning Commission,
It's a nine-person commission.
Yeah. Yep. And 3 of the ones that were missing were kind of the rural representatives, if I remember right. Mark Jiggett, I know, lives in the county.
If we were to send it back to the planning.
I don't see where we're at a deadline.
Yeah. Well, if we were to send it back to the Planning Commission, first of all, Omar has left, and we'd need to inform him that we've taken different action, but we would need to rescind the action that the motion that we did earlier and make the recommendation to send it back to the Planning Commission.
Well, when you have concerns of all the adjoining property owners, I think that.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them. Well, I'm going to look to our counsel here for a minute.
No, I just wanted to, since it was a resolution that was passed, we're going to have to pass a resolution to rescind,
Yeah.
right? So
Well,
want to make sure we understand.
I knew we were going to have to rescind.
Procedurally.
The process for doing that would be how you would instruct us, so.
You know, if they started building a home and we're under a deadline or something like that, it'd be a different situation, but it looks to me like it's just raw ground right now, other than the gun range
Okay.
issue.
So the motion, if we want to rescind our action, the motion would be that we approve resolution, it would be 21-2022, to rescind the motion, the resolution 20-2022. Is that correct?
No, you would need an entirely new resolution.
Yeah, but do we not need to put it in words today, and then you would draft that resolution?
Yes.
Yes, in essence, then you would cite the rescinding the passage of 2022. And then go ahead and vote on that, and Linda can go ahead and craft a short.
And not reference a new resolution at this point?
Well, you can, Dory can provide a resolution number, and we'll use that to craft and it's really pretty brief resolution. We can probably get that done prior to your adjourning.
Yeah.
But it authorizes then the commission then to sign that resolution rescinding.
Right. And that's why I referenced 21-2022, because wouldn't that be the next resolution number?
It'll actually be number 22 today. 21's already on the agenda today.
Oh, okay, so 22. And so we're rescinding the action, or excuse me, the resolution 2022 and replacing it with 22-2022 that says we are rescinding that resolution. And that would be the motion. And you're making that motion.
Yep, I'll make that motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
Not a second, but
No, I'm looking for a second. That motion dies for lack of a second. So the resolution 20-2022 is still in place. Yes, sir.
Some observations I'd like to make. Trent, please correct me if I misspeak in here. Former life, I was on the zoning commission for quite a few years. And to speak to the 40-acre rule, if my understanding at that period of time was if you had 40 acres, you do not need to go through the process to build your home because you got the 40 acres, you're a landowner. However, when the bank refuses to take 40 acres for a new home for collateral, they want 5 acres. That's where the 5-acre rule, part of that came in. Part of it was for that reason, part of it was to declare adequate ground for sewerage. And I was a big proponent on that 5-acre rule way back. Also covered the corners. There's a lot of corners have been developed in homes. But the 5-acre rule was, I think, a good rule in the county, simply to keep, instead of one 5-acre plot next to you, instead of having 10 2.5-acre plots or 2-acre plots. So that's partial in protection for what you're saying. Looking at your map here, I suspect there's 2 or 3 other 5-acre plots that are not developed here as well. But did I misspeak on any of that, Trent? Is that pretty much the gist of why the 40-acre rule, the 5-acre rule?
Yes, as far as what I understand. Now, the current acre rule is 2. We can't go below the 2, so.
But as a commission in the county, we kind of push 5 acres very hard.
Correct.
Other comments?
well, my comment was, who put the stack of tires there? Was that the gentleman that just bought that? So zoning or unzoning or changing isn't going to change the stack of tires. That's a compliance issue with safety. It has nothing to do with zoning.
That is his, I guess is his backstop for his rifle.
Well, I understand, but it's zoned ag before our action we took today and had a backstop, and he owns 5 acres of ag land and he's shooting on it. And now what he's asking for is the ability to build a house. You suppose the shooting may abate a little bit when he has a home there and maybe a family. So like I said, I can understand the Richmeyer's concern. I was raised on a farm and know how it is when you have neighbors that are doing things that you don't care about. But on the other hand, we're we're trying to penalize this fellow before we have all of the rules for enforcement.
I don't think what I was trying to do is penalize him. I thought maybe we just need to
Revisit it.
revisit this situation a little more with the information presented. Now, if evidently it wasn't thought that way, so we'll move on, but I mean, the only outcome that the neighborhood property owners can do is make sure to keep an eye on things and write complaints if they don't see it the way they like it.
For code enforcement.
Yeah, for code enforcement, that'd be my suggestion.
And that's what we need to work on, is code enforcement. So, anyway.
And we've got a similar thing with the trash out in our south subdivision, as far as code enforcement and trying to figure out how to deal with that. So it's not a new issue within the county, obviously, for sure. Well, again, I apologize because I felt like I was asking for comments on both sides of that issue. Evidently, I wasn't interpreted that way, and I very much apologize for that. So, thank you very much. All right, let's have Lana's part, and then we may take a little break after that, Sheriff, before we get into yours. But let's hear from Lana on the RHID. So.
Good morning, gentlemen. Rural Housing Incentive District. So we've had some discussion about this in the past, and we just felt like it was time to get back in front of you and see where we're at on the process and determine how you want us to move forward. So in your packet, you should have had a memo from me. One of the big pieces, as you guys know, of getting rural housing incentive districts to be usable in the county was to have a housing study that actually identified that there was enough demand for housing in the unincorporated areas of the county to allow us to ask the Secretary of Commerce for permission to do so. We did work very hard, and all of you participated in that housing assessment, and we appreciate that. We worked very hard to get that distinction made, that not all of the housing going forward would have to be in the city of Garden City to meet the demand that we have for our workforce. So with that, we had the opportunity to go out, identify some parcels that we felt made sense to utilize for rural housing incentive districts. And just as a reminder to you and to the public, that the only way the rural housing incentive district tool really works is if we have enough construction rapidly enough to allow the developer to get back their investment in infrastructure that actually belongs to you as the county. The way we have utilized the RHID tools so far in our county, we have had the developer take the risk of developing that infrastructure, whether that's roads, streets, curbs, gutters, streetlights, water, sewer, all of those things. The developer takes that risk up front, and the elected bodies, including all of the taxing entities, so the county, and the case we've had has been only the city of Garden City, so it's been the county, the city, and USD 457, as well as Garden City Community College, who have said, yes, we're good with waiting 15 years to get the full property tax return on those properties. So we have identified parcels that we believe make the most sense in the unincorporated area because they do allow us to do larger subdivisions. They are within the envelope, if you will, of the city of Garden City. So trying not to, as you just heard a case about going out and infringing on agriculture. Certainly agriculture is extremely important. That is the base of our economy, and none of us are going to stand in front of you and tell you that that's not important. So for us, we think it's important that we focus on the areas that are near the city already and make sense for doing significant housing construction instead of one-offs. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, if I remember previous discussions, Lana, this can be added to in the future.
Absolutely.
Not a static, these green areas that are designated are not static.
Absolutely. You are not stuck with these forever. You get to add parcels as you need to.
Questions from the commission?
Chairman,
So yeah, go ahead.
question for Lana. You said that you're here to give us a status report and kind of see where we are. So where are we? What needs to happen from the commission to?
Yeah, so you've got, what we would need for you to do today to let us move to the next step. You could either adopt the 2021, the results of that 21 housing study, which again did identify that the county does have needs in the unincorporated areas. And you can approve the parcels that we've identified and included in your packet so that we can actually get those up to the Secretary of Commerce. Or you can adopt the chat, but add or remove parcels that we've identified. Or you can tell us, go home and bring something different entirely. We would not ask that you do that. We'd ask that you do either one or two. And then, yeah, the step from there, there's a calendar in here that I had Steve provide to you that shows you the steps that we would take going forward. So if you opt to do that, we'd bring a resolution back and we'll be able to move forward with getting the Secretary of Commerce involved.
That housing study you just referenced tells us we need how many houses?
A lot. Actually, we need 4,000 minimum by 2030, which is
Right now, about 2,200.
only 7.5 years away. We're already short that many, yes. And the city of Garden City adopted one of their goals is 4,000 units by 2030. But quite frankly, I think the FCEDC board at our goal setting at the end of this month will most likely adopt a 6,000 unit goal in that same period. So go big or go home.
I think Robert has something.
You would make the motion?
Well, yeah, no, just a minute. We're still questions, but Robert had something.
I think we may have addressed this back in December. I'm going to look at Dory because I've probably slept since then and I don't know for sure. So I'm looking at her to think, was that something that we addressed in December? I think Lana was here in December. And
Yeah, there was a motion in December to accept the 21 Finney County chat and approve the parcels that were identified. Is this the same?
Yeah.
We do have that? We didn't receive anything.
December 6th.
We didn't receive anything from them saying that they had adopted them. So yeah, if we get that, we can move forward. If they're good with these parcels,
so I think,
we can bring the resolution to the next meeting.
I think the next step is to identify the recovery time. You have up to 25 years.
That discussion will take place, yeah, as part of your resolution. Yeah, the city of Garden City currently does 15 years. You are allowed more than that, but we would suggest that you keep your policy in line with what the city is doing and stay with the 15 years.
I knew we had discussed it. I had gotten the motion, but I knew we had previously discussed it. So we have that on the record.
Yeah, and we just need the minutes showing that, Dory, so we can include that for the resolution. Yeah.
Next step is a resolution and the recovery time for payment.
Yeah, and that resolution is already written, so we'll get it over to Dory so she can include it on your next meeting.
But other comments from the commissioners?
The only comment I have is I'm glad to see we're moving forward, but are these maps, they're on your website, these
Excuse me.
RHID
RHID maps? Mm-mm, they're not.
parcels? We need to publish these somewhere so somebody, developers can look at them and find them and if they're really interested.
Yeah. Yes,
I know,
and
I'm sure when they come talk to you, you can whip them out, but I mean, if they're just scrolling through things, it'd be nice to be able to look at them.
Bob, did you?
Are there some particular developers that, let's say, are ready to go if we do our stuff to get out of the way?
yeah, certainly I think we can find some opportunities. One of the big challenges when you look at that map, the parcels west of town, in that Quinby area, until we have a resolution to how wastewater will be managed there, we're kind of waiting to see how that will work out. Some of the others that are adjacent, I think could move pretty rapidly. And bear in mind,
South of town,
south of town,
in Southwind.
that one, my understanding is that they are ready to go, already have layouts done and so forth. And really, this tool is the only thing stopping them from progressing on getting those lots developable.
So then looking at your timeline, theoretically, if everything starts tripping, how long would it be before they could start building?
You're probably, we don't know for sure, obviously, how the Secretary of Commerce, how their office is working as far as approval of these. In the past, they've moved pretty rapidly when we've had to send in additional parcels. I would like to think that we would be in a place where within the next 60 to 90 days, that full approval would be in place. But again, that's, we're relying on an outside agency to sign off on these, so
It's an election year. They may move fast.
you may call them. Encourage them to move fast. Yeah. So certainly, and I would say to Commissioner Kreitzer, if there's something like that project that is being held, waiting for this, we can certainly share that information with them to help speed that process as well.
And then I guess I ask from our standpoint, from the administration standpoint, when someone identifies a parcel, and let's say the one in Southwind, because I think it is alive and will happen, we go through a developer's agreement or something like that, they come to you and ask those questions, or?
Right, it actually goes through your neighborhood development process over there, and then both Public Works, myself, and County Council get involved so we can do our processes in lockstep with what their schedule is. And so that's, it's really, once that request hits neighborhood development, it seems like that's when county gets involved. It's backed up.
Okay.
And just so you know, we create a calendar with every one of these so that the governing body is aware of when they need to be making decisions and what they need to be doing. So anytime we visit with the developer on a project, we ensure that they have that calendar in front of them. And Neighborhood Development Services does a good job of that as well.
And one final question, are any of these designated areas already in process with the county, with neighborhood development?
No, there are some of them that are in process with our office, but have not been presented for any public approvals yet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dave or Dwayne, any comments?
I just have one. I noticed we still have some skip annexing going on the east side of the city.
Some skip annexing?
Yeah, can't we just give that to them? If they're gonna jump around us, why can't they take those two little skip spots?
Okay, where did they skip you?
Are you talking about on the map we're looking at?
On the map
It's
we're
one
looking
on the
at.
screen.
That's on the
I
screen.
think he's looking at the green down at,
Oh, I'm looking at those two properties. TB
Oh,
Estates
the
in
Straighties.
particular,
okay.
and they won't be right to the northwest.
Well, I can go ask the city if they want it.
If they go around, they gotta take it.
Well, they haven't gone around you.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah.
With what? I'm not seeing
Just
what.
to the east of T-Boone is all city. Just to the west of your two green lots there on the far east.
This one?
Yeah,
That one there,
yeah.
And which property are you talking about?
the one just to the west of that nice school.
This one?
Yep.
That's in the city?
No, it's not.
Well,
It's annexed out.
these, but what she's asking and what she asked for in December is RHID
No, I'm
from
not
a
talking
county.
about nothing to do with.
No,
RHI.
but from a,
I'm talking
no,
about the
but from a
city.
county perspective.
Okay, Dwayne, come see me at my office and I'll help you
These
under.
would be county properties that would be eligible for RHID.
And to Dwayne's point, certainly if some of these came before you, that it made more sense for whatever reason for them to ask for annexation into the city for services,
City.
that could be done.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Well, I still don't, so he's gonna have to come explain it to me.
Yeah, he'll have,
Nothing to do with RHID.
no, I see
Okay.
what you're saying though, yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Dory.
So considering the resolution that was made in December, and noting on the calendar that the maximum reimbursement period needs to be determined in order for that resolution to be brought, is that something you need to take an action on today? Concerning the resolution or the reimbursement period?
I think that's
Because that was not done in December, that piece of it.
right, but wouldn't that be a part of the resolution that we're gonna be asked at next meeting to approve? Yeah, so what we approved in December is what was on our agenda today to approve, which I think we're done with that. The next piece, which would be that recapture years, number of years, would be in the resolution.
Let's keep them consistent.
Okay, and I think her question is valid in essence is, what would you like to have on that?
Oh, what do we need to instruct you to do? Is that, oh, okay, I'm not interpreting questions today. But, no, I didn't. So we've got 15, but we could do up to 25 if I'm not mistaken. And the city is at a 15-year period, right?
Yes, and I can tell you that all of the RHIDs that we've had in place in the city of Garden City, with the exception of one, will pay out ahead of the 15-year schedule.
I move we adopt the 15-year.
And instruct staff
Second.
to include that in the resolution. And then there's a motion and a second to do that. No further discussion, I don't believe. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. So you are instructed to include that in the.
We'll send the resolution over to Linda, and we'll include 15-year repayment. Any other questions for me, gentlemen?
Don't think so.
What, just
Oh,
one
well.
little quick
A little quick one.
Yeah. On the, if I was a prospective developer, what exactly does this bring me?
The Rural Housing Incentive District tool?
What's the incentive? What's the financial incentive?
Sure, absolutely. So the way we utilize
I'm not
it,
getting the weeds, but I mean,
It's-
just give me a,
it's okay, but the way we have utilized it in the city of Garden City, again, we put the onus on the developers. So what you're allowed to get reimbursed for are basically the horizontal improvements. So water, sewer, electric, sidewalks, streets, curbs, gutters, streetlights, those kinds of things. No vertical construction is covered through the RHID tool. But what they're building is your infrastructure. They're building your streets, they're building your wastewater, your water. So the way we've utilized it, the developer puts that expense out, and then you all, as well as the other taxing entities engaged, agree to allow them to take back the increment for the first 15 years. They get the increment in property tax. So everything we've been getting off of that property, all of the taxing entities continue to get. But once this is in place, if I build a house that increases the tax revenue by $1,000, the developer is now allowed that $1,000 to help repay that infrastructure cost. Banks are allowed to assign on these, so it becomes a finance tool that developers are able to use with their bank financing as well. Does that answer your question, sir?
And just one bit of clarification, the county, school district, college, everybody else continues to receive the amount of tax that they were getting today.
That is correct. We never give away existing property tax revenues with these tools. These are just foregoing your full benefit of that housing unit. And as Commissioner Dave Jones has said, with where we are right now, housing is a huge issue for us. It's becoming a detriment for our employers. It's making it far more difficult to get workers here. So we would tell you that every housing unit we build not only has the tax revenue that comes from that property, but further allows us to fill an additional position within our community and allow our businesses to thrive.
Okay.
You're welcome.
We've
Great.
instructed staff to include the 15-year provision in the resolution, and that resolution we expect to have here in 2 weeks at the next meeting. So we're going to take a almost 10-minute break, and we'll reconvene just shortly after 9:50, and then we'll start again. You didn't have anywhere to go, did you, Sheriff?
need more coffee.
Across the street, refill.
Oh.
I cheated.
Dave's gonna come on around behind us, so he won't be stepping in front of the podium. So let's go ahead and start again, and we're gonna have the sheriff come up and give us a report. I don't know that there's gonna be any action today, but give us a report about findings with regard to trying to address the healthcare issue over in the jail area. So Sheriff Mike?
Good morning.
Morning.
So I did talk with Ford County, and I talked with a man, I think his name is Matt Schultz, with the Advanced Correctional Health is who you seen his stuff. Reason Ford County is that was one of the questions, why are they so much higher? When they did their contract back in 2016, it was roughly, he said, for 200 inmates. Not the 110 that they're currently at, which is what I thought they had. He also said that they have, from talking to Matt, he says Ford County put together a pool, well, I guess a pool of money, for incidentals such as pharmaceuticals, I would have guessed any type of visits they may have to take inmates to an emergency room or doctor. He said just incidental things like that they have a pool that they draw from. So I don't know if that covers their mental health as well. I don't know exactly what all that pool covers, but that's why their expenses is a little higher. Plus, their nurse was contracted at 60 hours and not 40 hours like we were looking at. So that makes quite a bit of difference. As far as what Matt had told me they like to look at is, the question was how much would they probably raise a year, from year to year. He said they usually go about a 3% because pay increases for their employees. So he said that's something that on the average, you could probably look at a 3% increase every year. We did talk with Commissioner Kreitzer, got us over to talk to Centura. They have not given us a decision at this point. They said probably within a week they would let us know. They had a lot of questions. I hope we provided a lot of answers to them on what we're looking for. I don't think that's something they're real familiar with, so I don't know how long it'll take them to put something together. I would, if they did submit, I'm not sure how quickly they could actually get to us. That would be a question I would certainly have, how long that's going to take. We're kind of in dire needs at this point, so. I have had some other, since then, I think Growell was commented, I don't know if it was Commissioner, maybe, okay, Commissioner Jones did. They did come forward. I have, Carmine has contacted us. I think he's going to be here sometime this afternoon. I think we have meetings with him, I think tomorrow anyway. But we obviously have a lot of questions for him. He has emailed me a proposal with mental side of it, which I believe, what is that, the telemental health is what we have a lot of questions about that because we currently have that and that doesn't work real well for us. But he's wanting to bid on putting a nurse up there, which is great. So there we are. His proposal at this point right now is a little bit higher than what we had with that advanced correctional. So, but we need to probably hash some things out with him.
Mike, quick question before I open it up to the other members. On this advanced correctional, it seems like, and I'm not seeing it quickly here, that their quote was good for X days or months or something.
Yes.
As you visited with them again, did they understand that we're needing a little bit more time to give you direction?
And I told him that. I told him I'd probably have to get back with him. He'll probably have to resubmit once we get down that road, because
So you would anticipate those numbers may change just a little bit?
they could.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. Okay. Larry, I'm going to look at you first. Comments or questions?
Question, no, do they, advanced correctional, do they prorate their fees on number of inmates, or do they, it's a set?
What we do is we contract a set number of inmates. If we go over that, they have a formula, and I know I talked to Commissioner Kreitzer about that. They have a formula which they'll figure up per inmate how much we're over, that they'll charge us extra. If we're under, then they credit us back for that. They have use the same formula to credit back.
That's what I was curious about, whether you had some way of prorating your inmate count.
Bob? Your
I think
comments?
it was very interesting. I think the sheriff's department was very well prepared when we met with Centura. They had a firm grasp of what their needs were. And I think it kind of poked some holes in the advanced deal that I think in finding what you did when you talked to your counterparts in Dodge, that you'll probably want to maybe even revise your request or the contract, certainly when it comes time to budget, because if we put the number that's in this contract now in there, I think we would use that very quickly. Larry, to your point, based on how many inmates, they have a formula in here, and everybody does a number for something, but it's way cheap to have extra people. They have a formula, and they said, as an example, if you had 10 extra clients, inmates, and you would take 10 times 43 cents times 91, the days in a quarter. So if you had 10 extra inmates, it would be less than $400 for a quarter, which is amazing. Now, I could see that would benefit them on the low end side in terms of a credit, but the escalator that's in here is cost of living. Like right now, it's almost 8%, or 5%, whichever's larger. So the 3% doesn't work, but the higher numbers do. But I think the Dodge City numbers are closer to what we would be budgeting if we came into that. I think the 60 hours, the way your team explained what you needed and what you were getting from the health department is far closer than the 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, because unfortunately in this contract, they say there shall be no call-outs. In other words, once that person goes home, they're home, and you need more help than that, and you've got to find a way, and I'm sure they will find a way to help you, but again, dollars. So I think we have a much, much better view, and I think as you speak with these other potential applicants for this service, I think you can ask a lot better questions about where we're headed. So I think we're going into it. The real shame is we don't have what we used to have because it was a hell of a lot cheaper.
Yep. Dwayne, turn to you.
My only observation is non-county guest. If somebody gets sick, who's responsible for them?
What's that?
The non-county patients.
And that's an issue, that's a topic that Commissioner Kreitzer and I were talking about. We're gonna have to address that. And I'm not sure, because when we met with Matt, when he was here, I was pretty much under the impression, weren't you guys, that anybody was in our jail, they were taken care of. And then I seen that contract, and I have questions on that, because I know Ford County has outside inmates as well. I know we take some from the ICE, and I know they do a lot too, and then theirs are covered, so I don't know if that may be something that's extra.
Dave?
Well, I think you've answered my questions pretty much, except I'll be straightforward. The last time you stood before us, Mike, I asked what the arrangement was with the city, but you also take highway patrol prisoners, for example.
Yes.
And I think by kind of either by statute or by tradition, the county has picked up the medical costs on those state prisoners. But I don't know what the arrangement is with the city, where at one time, they had more prisoners in the jail than the county.
Yes, and we've traded off there, they do the dispatching, and that's always been the trade-off. They provide communications, and we provide the jail side of it. And I think years ago, and I know we talked to Sheriff Basque, and that was looked at, I think, by commission and by himself, that what if we had our own dispatchers? And I think right now, we're probably saving some money by housing their prisoners. When you start hiring employees and the benefits, and I believe that's what they found then, that even though they may have more inmates up there, that cost of inmates a lot cheaper than the cost of a dispatcher.
So, if I were to, well, and then Robert or Linda, either one of you, if you have comments here in a second. But if I understand you correctly, we're still kind of in a research mode, and you'll come back in a meeting or two and give your thought on whether to stick with this recommendation or some other alternative. Am I correct on that?
Yes, I believe we need to, I think with this contract, I can see where we need to visit with ACH a little more. Obviously, the time is probably up on theirs anyway, and we get some more information. I need to visit with Carmen, who's supposed to be here this afternoon, so we'll have a little better understanding. And it's awesome, the community, I feel like, since we went to Centuras, has just kind of opened up, and I've had Live Well meet with me this morning, and they have some health or some mental health they said they could provide. I need to get with them and see exactly what that's about. So.
And I know Carmen is interested in coming to our County Commissioner Association meeting in April in Salina, not specific to the jails, but grow well within other counties within the state. So I know he's interested in trying to expand what they do through Grow Well as well, in other ways as well, so.
And I appreciate his, and I from talking to the county administrator, I agree. We really need to stick with somebody who does this for a living, and I know that's what ACH does. I don't know what Grow Well, it could be a good thing for them too, and for us, but that's something we need to explore.
I absolutely agree. Robert, any other thoughts to add to the conversation?
No, I just think we need to do a little bit more homework and start throwing up a comparative chart and see what we have there.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else from the commission?
Just curious, on a contract like this, is that something Robert signs, you sign, the sheriff signs?
They vary on who is asked to sign them, and I don't remember on this one.
But the board would authorize that signature,
Right.
whoever it is.
Okay, the
It
board
would be board
authorizes someone.
Yeah, it would be board action on the contract, but
Very good.
who signs it, I'm
Okay,
not sure.
that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Thanks.
As long as I don't have to pay for it, I'll sign it.
Oh, you're one of the payers. Through your taxes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mike, thank you, and
you.
keep us informed. Yep. Okay, next item, I think that's first page. Dwayne, we're on to the second page now. Kevin, why don't you come forward, and I believe, even though it's in the budget, we're being asked to look at this bid because it's over the amount that you can do as a department. Am I correct on that? All right. Kevin, go ahead.
Van Diest and Nutrien, we sent out 5 bids. 2 of them came back, Van Diest and Nutrien. You've got all the numbers there in front of you. We're gonna purchase probably around, because of the price of the chemicals this year, we're probably only gonna be able to do half of what we did last year, which would be about 2,000 gallon of 2,4-D, if we can get it. It's one of those chemicals that may not be available to us. And some of the others, the Tordon for the bindweed, it gets allocated to us It goes to ag side first and then comes to us. So weed department's on the very bottom of the list to even get any of these chemicals. I just need to see if you guys will accept those prices. And the other thing is Nutrien was a little higher on their 2,4-Ds, but they do have it available. I don't know how many gallons Van Diest has available for us at this time. It's $5 higher a gallon too, so. Van Diest also, on their glyphosate, which is the Roundup Pro down at the bottom, that is roadside only. That can't be put on any agricultural. And so Nutrien has some Roundup for agricultural side for the chemical sales. If we can accept maybe the 2,4-D amine from Nutrien and the Roundup, it's not in the 30s, but the 2x2.5s, and then accept all of Van Diest. Pretty much the prices are all the same except for a couple of those.
Okay. Comments from the administrator, or anything that you think we're missing or we need to know?
No comments on it.
Okay. Commissioners, what's your desire? He's wanting to buy more of it from the county.
Can't buy it that cheap. I move we approve the bid as presented.
From Van Diest?
Correct.
And is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Larry, who probably uses some of this stuff too, so. Any other comments? All in favor of the motion? And, well, before I ask for it, and Kevin has noted here that it is within his budget, and from a financial standpoint, it's covered budget-wise. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Kevin.
Will you be
Yeah.
approving the Nutrien 2,4-D,
Do what?
the Nutrien on the second bid?
Okay, because we didn't have that in our memo, but, or did we?
Well,
We have a separate memo on that? I mean, I know
We have
we
that.
talked about Nutrien, but,
They'll let you break it down by products from each one of them.
if it's up to you guys.
Buy the 2,4-D from Nutrien.
And then
Okay.
the glyphosate also.
Second.
moved and seconded for those two chemicals from Nutrien.
Can we clarify that motion, please?
Yeah, well, Kevin will give you the spelling of the chemical names, but there's two chemicals that we're approving be purchased from Nutrien. And any further discussion? All opposed, or all, excuse me, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Well, after a big wedding, so.
Making sure they all think.
And we even had the chicken dance the other day, so. Well, I'm distracted by another item, but, okay, now we have a resolution, and this one is 19-2022, correct? Dory, is that still the viable resolution number? For emergency management coordinator, we've been asked to appoint Paul, and he's been sitting patiently back there. And,
Talk that much. KDAM requires us to have a resolution so I can get appointed, so I can start receiving their official communications. So it's kind of what I'm asking for right now, so.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
would I be out of line offering a motion to name Paul Wrestley our official emergency management coordinator for Finney County by resolution 19-2022?
No, not out of order at all. So there is a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Dwayne. Further comment or discussion?
A little bit of quick information. Paul had a nice article in the paper, thanks to Megan, about his new job, except for a little headline on the third page, which you were EMS director there, but You know, we get whatever. But he has now also a responsibility over the next 2 years to meet a training regimen. He's probably met a lot of it just due to his background, but he'll have to have the training regimen in order to become a certified emergency manager. And so that's where
Completed about
that's where
half
she's
of
on.
that already.
Yeah, right. So anyway, I'm proud to offer the motion.
Any other comments before we vote? All in favor of approving Resolution 19-2022, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. You are appointed, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations. Okay, then we have a resolution, and this number, yeah, that's why she called me on that a little bit ago, because we have one 21-2022 on redemption of bond series 2014. And Robert, I think you're going to talk us through this.
Yes, just real briefly on this one here. As you're aware, we went through the process and put a question to the voters, which in essence replaces this sales tax as we have the funds to call the current bond on the facility down south, which we'll be paying off in October of this year. In essence, then what you have before you, since this was a pledged revenue for it, then you'll have this resolution in essence then for the redemption of that outstanding GO issuance. Any questions?
Questions from the commissioners? Comments? So I would ask for a motion to approve Resolution 21-2022.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve Resolution 21-2022.
And it is seconded. All in favor of the motion, please.
Yes,
Oh, no,
just
excuse me, I
clarification.
forgot.
We
Yeah,
had
comments. Yeah.
the proceeds from the sales tax were going to that particular project. The proceeds continue, and now the proceeds go where? Just to general obligation, or?
No, all the proceeds from the sales tax goes towards the retirement of this GO issue.
Right.
Since it's a pledged revenue, it ends by statute the end of June this year. Any revenues that are above the payoff of that stays within that fund for that facility.
They were dedicated to that facility.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So there is a motion to approve that resolution to retire that debt. Few months.
It was a 10-year issuance, if I remember correctly. So it's paid off. Is it two? No, excuse me. It's, yeah. No, excuse me. It is a 15-year issuance. It's paid off 5 years early.
Oh, very good.
Correct.
Any other comments? If not, all in favor of the motion for 21-2022, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. So I think Bob, here's one for you and Larry to sign. There's another one coming on these resolutions. I asked Robert and Dory to put the next couple of items on under board governance, because board governance, our governance as a board is around budget and other policies and so forth. And I want to start the discussion with regard to the budget, and then we're going to go into some conversation about the ARPA funds and give some guidance to staff on what we believe should be done with regard to ARPA. But with regard to the budget, I've been professing for several years that we need to proactively help the staff understand what we believe are the priorities and and the policies and so forth, so that they don't spend an inordinate amount of time with regard to budget, and they're going off the right-hand way, and we think it should be over to the left-hand way. And so that we're wisely using staff time in construction of the budget for next year. And there's conversations have begun at the staff level just recently with regard to the 2023 budget. And so it's time for us to give our thoughts to Robert and the staff. For example, we talked about the mandated services that we need to provide, and are those the only things that we want to provide with funding through the budget? How strongly do we feel about the people aspect of the budget, which I haven't broken it down, but usually human resources are about 85% of a budget compared to capital improvements and so forth and so on. I haven't calculated it out exactly, but it's roughly in that neighborhood with any company, any organization. So it's a big piece of our multi-million-dollar budget. Are there some capital things that we think are important that should come to us that will not be taken care of through ARPA funds or things of that nature? So some of this will kind of weave together with the ARPA discussion as well. But, you know, what's important to us on behalf of the taxpayers as far as next year's budget? And Robert, you may have some opening comments, so to speak, as you're talking about this, on what you're needing guidance about from a staff. So again, that we're all going down the track, the same direction, on the same track. So I'll turn to you for just a few comments.
Sure. Well, as you know, really this coincides with the annual audit as well, just to put everything in perspective. Couple of things that those of you that have been through this budget process a couple of times now with me is that I take a 5-year look at the county operations and county initiatives that are going on. Also throughout the year, then we really start cataloging things that the commission says in the meeting that they'd like to look at and achieve. And then, of course, during this time of year, we look for any additional directions that that the commission wants to achieve. The fiscal committee then goes through the process of listening to the department heads, constructing the budget to meet the requirements by statute of providing services, county services. And as you recall, I began the process of creating a CIP fund and equipment reserve fund so that we can address the constant needs for repairs, improvements to both facilities and equipment, and that includes replacement of equipment and so forth. So the 2023 budget begins the third year of that process. And as you recall, at year end, we went through the process of transferring monies into those reserve funds so we can meet those future needs for replacement and repair of facilities and equipment. And that just gives you a brief overview of the process. Absent that, then, in our discussion will as well focus on funding of outside agencies and your thoughts. Traditionally, we go through the process of meeting with them, understanding their services, then placing those requests within the budget tentatively based upon your direction. And then they'll come up and make their presentation to the board. And at that point in time, you will, in essence, accept their proposal, but not make a determination on the final funding. Normally that's done towards the end of the budgeting process as we start boiling it down a little bit closer. So, any questions?
Well, let me just piggyback on that real quick. In the simplest of terms, in my 40-year profession, it's somewhat the needs and wants scenario. You know, here's what we need to do to comply with law, to comply with regulations, to comply with the mandates we have, and so forth. And here's what we want to do. And when I say we, I use that term, we, on behalf of the taxpayers. Please understand that I'm not saying just the five of us, but that is part of this conversation. You know, what do we want to, and I'm not suggesting that we don't allow them to come in. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying, as I was misunderstood earlier today. I'm not encouraging not allowing them to come in, but is that a part of our needs or is that a part of our wants? So tied to that, when we reference the outside agencies and so forth, we've got a few that are actually needs, if you will, in my simplest of terms, because we have the voters have approved something. There's some things that have locked us into a percentage of funding or something like that. Can you briefly help us with that as it relates to outside?
Well, one of them, by way of example, is that was provided through a discussion here with in prior commissions, is the funding for the library. That's one that you make the determination on. Actually, the county commission has made that determination on, and so we adhere to that resolution that has created that agreement in essence. The other, then you have other items there that you are required to provide by statute, and those things then are also included within your budget. The variance between all of these is the choice in as far as level of funding that you're willing to provide within that. So for many of them, there is either local law resolution or state law statutes that you adhere to fund them. But once again, it's the determination of what level of funding you want to provide.
And then lastly, and then I'm going to open it, so be ready. Then I'm going to open it up to discussion by all of the rest of you. The last thing that I want to touch on is Senate Bill 13 that talks about revenue neutral. And now, I don't know if they did change the language. They were talking about changing the terminology this session, and I don't know that they did that. But between Dory and Robert, refresh our memory about how revenue neutral rate guides our budgeting process as well. And some deadlines you might have, some notifications we have to put out, and so forth and so on. And then we'll open it to discussion by the commissioners.
So by July 20th, Robert will need to submit your intent, if you intend to go over the revenue neutral rate. That'll be calculated and provided to you in June when we do the June abstract with the preliminary values. If you look at your budget and you intend to go over that rate, you have to notify me by July 20th. And at that time, we will create notifications. We'll get those notifications from all the different taxing entities. And then we will prepare notifications to any taxpayers affected by a potential increase.
And just a quick technical question. This year yet, the notifications being paid for, the cost of that is being paid by the state, but this is the last year that the state has committed to that, or is this the first year the state's?
I think there were no notifications last year, other than the normal publish in the newspaper. The state, I believe, is paying for 2 years, so they'll pay for the 23 budget and the 24 budget year.
I was trying to keep those straight on yeah, Robert?
And we did go through as you recall, we did go through the revenue neutral process last year.
Yes, but no notification, so the payment of those notices is 23 and 24. Yeah.
And there is no penalty for saying you intend to go over and then not going over. Some use that as kind of a safety net. You don't know what your valuation's going to do by November, so just something to consider.
So now I want to open it to the rest of you to discuss, what are our priorities? What do we need to be telling the staff as far as prioritization when it comes to the '23 budget? What's most important to us on behalf of the taxpayers to help guide the staff? And because I'm looking over toward Robert, my eyes immediately go to Larry, and I'm going to, yeah.
Chairman? I guess always as a commissioner in the past, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is people like consistency on their taxes. They don't like to see the mill levy jumping around. You know, other than that, they don't complain when it goes down, but they do when it goes up. Along with their valuations, in which we all have received, I would guess, you know, our appraiser said average is 10% this year or 11, somewhere in that range. And I don't know what it is on commercial, but you know, if we can do anything we can to do to try to keep our mill levy consistently at a level where, you know, we don't make big economic shocks to our taxpayers.
And keep in mind that your mill levy will fluctuate based on that valuation. So it's not really about that mill levy rate. It's more about what your valuation is and what your budget is, because that's how we get to that rate.
Because they're looking at dollars with the revenue neutral rate, are they not?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, that's correct. And so as those values go up, your appraised value goes up and your total assessed valuation goes up, that number is adjusted through the revenue neutral process, which in essence gives you your upper limit to, in essence, kind of stay the same as what you were the years prior. So
It has been very difficult to, or I think it will be, just based on all of the contracts we have that have an annual increase, like we were just talking about with ACH, you know, up to 7%, I think you said. So considering that, it gets more and more difficult to maintain that revenue neutral rate because of all these contracts we have, because everybody else wants to pay their people better, you know, and give them cost of living increases. So it's something to consider.
Anything else at this point? Because this is open discussion here, but I just was starting to make sure.
That's just my first thought that comes to mind.
Okay, Bob?
I guess I need clarification on revenue neutral. Does that mean they don't give any credence to an increase in cost of living
They do not.
or inflation or anything?
They do not.
All right, so the real world between last year and this year, we've had a phenomenal impact. And last year's budget, in terms of employees, we were very, very minuscule in what we did with our employees. And so therefore, in the market, we're having a really tough time attracting and even maintaining our employee relations. And so, to me, that's got to be a big, big focus. We've got to be competitive in our market. And I think we've got to really pay attention to what our market is. I think we've got to make sure that the people in Southwest Kansas, we can compete favorably. We've got a great benefit program. We've got all kinds of things that are in our favor, but our hands are absolutely tied by the amount of money that we're making available for our employees. So that, you know, would be kind of first and foremost. And then I think we need to really pay attention to that outside group and, you know, the people that are depending, because they're getting hit the same way that all of us are individually with that cost of living, and make a decision as to where we go. You know, the goal of everybody being able to pay what they paid last year in taxes is not going to be realistic, you know, and valuation's going to be one thing. But if you take the valuation and the same mill levy, you know, hopefully there would be a 10% of that segment that would go up. But a lot of people will yell and holler if their taxes go up 10%, but the real world cost of living has gone up more than that. And I don't, in spite of what some of the politicians say, I don't think it's over yet. So we're going to have our hands full. And then I guess the last thing would be when we are looking at sources of money that we use to buy things or to do projects. Whenever we use the free money from the government, the ARPA money or infrastructure or whatever, we've got to realize that that project will cost significantly more if we use those dollars versus sales tax dollars because of the prevailing wage requirements that come tied to that money. So if we have to decide to shuffle money from one kind of a pocket to a different, we need to really pay attention to those kind of dollars.
Good thoughts? Dwayne?
You guys pretty much covered it, but, you know, I would have to agree, our employee costs have to go up, so the overall dollars will have to go up over last year, I'm quite sure. Because of the evaluation thing up 10%, I'm not so sure the mill levy will go up. It might even drop to get the dollars we need. But the taxpayer will probably see an increase in his taxes regardless. I don't want to neglect our capital improvements to our buildings. I think we need to stay current with our projections and plans to keep the budgets in place for these buildings. We don't want to get behind the ball too far on these things, so we got to keep that in the budget as well.
Dave?
You want me to?
We can.
Mike's now on, I'm sorry. My,
Go.
okay, here we go. To me, our source of funding comes from three different kind of places. We have the ARPA funding, and to me, I agree with everything said, but that ought to be also considered for the one-time expenditure, because it's not gonna go on and on. So what is it that we can purchase that we need that is one time? The second income source obviously is property tax, and then the third, sales tax. And so our citizens have been very kind to us in supporting sales tax renewals for different programs. But folks, every time we have them vote, we throw in a little term that then kind of gets forgotten, and that's called property tax relief. And so I think that's kind of what I'm hearing here, that at least in my coffee shop circles, the criticism is that property tax just keeps going up and up and up. And at some point, we need to consider a little bit of a step back, maybe. On the other hand, we've got the employee situation, and we recognize, you know, we have sitting in our audience today a county attorney, and I remember very well a comment that Linda made at a kind of a workshop we had. She said, I think we were talking about attorneys for indigent defense or whatever, but their contract, they got a 5% pay raise, and her employees got a 2 or 3%, 1%, whatever it was. I remember her comment, though, that it looked like we valued the folks outside of county employment more than we did county employees. I've not forgotten that, Linda, and so as we look at budgeting, we've got a project ahead of us, that's for sure, trying to satisfy everybody. Oh, I'm sorry, I said Linda. I'm Susan. Getting my attorneys. Yeah, my attorneys mixed up. Susan Richmeyer. We'll give her full name credit. So, but anyway, we want to say one more thing. We got so much interrelated right now, like a sewer district, with when we get through closing down Northwest Territories and approving what's going across the road and sewer district bids come in, then we begin to have an understanding of where we're going with some of that funding request, but the big part of that is ARPA, is it not, for sewer?
That's correct.
That's one-time expenditure. But that's gonna involve some associated other expense, so hang on, we got a task ahead of us. Thank you, Lon.
No, we aren't going to cut off the conversation here a minute. If something strikes you that you haven't thought about, or somebody else's comments prompt prompts a thought, but I've heard a theme about people being a high priority, Robert. And I want to ask one question before I go further. It seems like in our overall county, we have about 300 employees, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
But that's probably about 50 to 60 people less in county-wide than what we might need in order to provide our services at the ultimate value for the taxpayers, like with roads and bridges or, you know, health or whatever it might be. Am I somewhere in the ballpark?
Yes, you probably have at this point in time approximately 50 open positions, just under 20% vacancy in your employee population.
And then the other piece, and I think Bob was the one who referenced it earlier, is then the attracting and retention factor, being able to attract them in the first place. And then we have a great benefit package. I mean, yes, we've had to change the health insurance over the last several years, but with the capers and all the other things that we have going, but trying to attract them with the salary aspect of employee benefits, that's causing us concern as well, is it not? To be able to provide those services at the highest level possible?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So I think you're hearing from us that people are important. You've heard from a couple commissioners that outside agencies that we need to hear from them. I think you've heard that. I guess that's a consensus of all of us, that we need to hear from them, even though we don't want to set their expectations unrealistically, that might be a piece that we have to curtail to a certain degree in order to make sure the county is providing the best services for the taxpayer that we're charged to do. And is where I'm going with that. The other thing I wanted to mention, and this kind of leads into the ARPA thing, and I'm not shutting off budget conversation here for a minute, but is that we have an email serve list through the KAC that goes by district. Are you, each of you, getting emails from your district counterparts across the state? Well, the conversation in our District 1 conversation this past week was started by a county commissioner in Marshall County asking what people are using their ARPA funds for. And it kind of crosses over from budget to ARPA, but in each case, well, the question was asked, is anybody using ARPA funds for premium pay or personnel costs or the add on to pay for employees? And in each case, they said, no, we're really not doing that. We're looking at infrastructure. Except in one county's case said, we are looking for that because we cannot find health and EMS people. And so they were going to try to do something with that to attract people for health and EMS. So I think you're hearing from us, Robert, that people are important, that we need to keep that at the top of the list. And my last comment to the budget aspect is that we had a tax lid before Senate Bill 13 that really handcuffed us in certain ways. We lowered the mill levy and kept it stable over the years. But if we're having trouble finding people to fill positions and we can't attract and retain them, how are we going to take care of those roads? How are we going to make sure that the sheriff's services are provided and so forth and so on? So I don't know if that gives you enough direction this morning with regard to the budgeting process, or if you need to ask us some additional questions of clarification.
What I look for is your prioritization in the process. And so just by way of example here, what I've heard is this year the commission wants to focus on specifically employees and employees' salary and so forth, retention and attraction. Additionally, there's the comment that was made about capital improvements, specifically facilities, wanting to commit to that. Once again, last year we made a very big push in structuring the budget so that we could set aside the funds to maintain facilities. And that was embraced by the Board of County Commissioners, and still an emphasis on that. As far as the other issue, which is having done this for over 25 years now, is that we want to try and maintain a consistent, if you will, property tax approach, if at all possible. Last year, we went through this process. We reduced the amount of monies that we had appropriated for capital improvement projects and equipment reserve in order to get to that balance that the commission was, at that point in time, okay with. I don't want to say comfortable, but they realized because of the constraints out there that they were okay with. And then of course the utilization of one-time funding. There's a caveat with that, and I've consistently embraced that you use it one-time funding for one-time expenses, except for, there's always an exception to the rule, if you're using it as a mechanism to catapult yourself, so to speak, into funding another direction. You're just deferring the time in which you fund it with your local tax dollars. By way of example, if you recall back in November, I talked to you about potentially using some of that ARPA funding for wages, and in essence then it prolongs you budgeting for it perhaps through property tax until 24, or maybe even potentially 25, depending on your fund balance. So there's an option there that you could use to defray the timing, if you will, of utilizing property tax for that. So those are just some of the takeaways that I've got, and that's really what I look for is direction.
So, hearing what Robert said, and I'm going to come back to the what he opened the door to a thought about using some ARPA funds to defer budgeting for salary improvements and so forth until we get into the ARPA funding here a minute. But other thoughts with regard to the priorities that you heard him summarize, do you feel like he's reading us as a board very well, or pretty well, as far as what we believe the priorities are? And again, since I started with Larry, we're going to see if you have any additional comments.
I don't have any additional comments. I would say that he's reading this correctly. I have a little trouble with the exception on the wages on the one time. I don't know how that just looks to me like you're postponing the pain.
In essence, that's exactly what you're doing. You're trying, or you're easing into it, however you want to approach it. But that's exactly what you're doing.
I think more is it gives you an opportunity to ease into it, where you can, kind of wean yourself off of those one-time funds, and then instead of a big hit in 1 year, you spread it out over a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think another way to phrase it, because there's several ways to phrase that thing, is do we want to instruct staff to take a look at, in our 23 budget, of enhancing pay, and knowing that we may be out asking for the taxpayers to support us in raising the dollars that we're needing to do that, or do the ARPA funds take care of it in 23, and then in 24, 25, whatever, we're trying to do that through the budget. So if people are important, where? Yeah. Okay.
Correct. That's exactly correct. You could use anything in that spectrum. If you say, well, we would fund up to 50% of those increases using the ARPA funds for this year in 23.
Yeah.
And then in knowing in 24, you would be committed to that full. So it would be that progression, if you will. Those are just thoughts.
Anything else, Larry? Bob?
Yeah, I think two things. Number one, if we've had this 50 or 60 people short for a year or two, I think all private companies have learned that they can readjust the way we've always done things and perhaps end up with fewer people required. And I think that would be something for each department head to really take a look, because it is significantly cheaper if someone has to work an extra 5 or 12 hours in a pay period than it is to have another person who isn't necessarily required. And then the other thing I think, Dave, that you addressed would be like in Northwest Development. You know, they have a sewer system that's working. So when we take it over, quote unquote, if we do as a board, that's where we are. Now, this new development that wants to come in there and wants to utilize that system, to me, that would be a developer's agreement where that entity would pay for that expansion. And I think that's where, when we talk about growth, we need to be very aware early, and we need to get in early on all of these deals so that we explain to people what we as a county are going to do and what we expect them to do. I think our answer should always be, yes, we're really excited about you being here, but outline what steps we are going to have you help us to make this thing all work. But if we try to take on all of those kind of development expenses on the back of our taxpayers, I don't think that's fair. I think the people who are going to benefit from that district should be the ones paying those costs.
Robert?
Just in a couple of responses, that's exactly, in terms of the vacancies, that is exactly what your HR department is doing right now. We're going through that process of assessing the needs of refilling or replenishing those positions. Secondly, as far as on the, we'll go with Northwest Industrial District there. The reason for the creation of that sewer district is to, in essence, specifically put those costs back on that district as they, as they're incurred. And going through the calculation of that current district, what is their specific need for, by way of gallons that they could produce once they build out and so forth. Will that pump station handle it? Do we have the agreement in place with the city of Garden City to accept all of that effluent and so on and so forth? Those are processes that you just work through in order to be able to say, yes, sure, we can accept this, but it takes some planning to do that. So.
Dave?
I'm going to make this short. We're out kind of on bids right now for 3 sewer districts. We don't know how much ARPA funding that's actually going to cost.
We're not out for bids yet. We had the engineers come in and go through the assessment of it, so we can go out for bids, correct?
I'm oversimplifying for my example here, but when those bids come in and are approved, then we'll know how much ARPA funding remains. Right now, we don't know. On the other hand, we're talking capital improvements. As I recall, folks, we asked our voters, would you support a 1/4 cent sales tax extension? And we have a piece of property at 8th Street and Mary, and we intend to build, so that you know, taxpayers, we intend to build a new EMS public health complex facility or whatever. We're kind of committed to that, and we're collecting that sales tax right now, so we.
Not yet.
Well.
Begins of July.
July, yeah, but it's right here.
We will be, yeah.
We're about time to start getting our plans in place for that 8th Street property too. And what I'm saying is we've made some promises, if you will, to some people, and we need to stay with them. So anyway, that's it.
No, I agree. We need to fulfill our promises, no question. Dwayne?
We talked about employees at length here. We've got a lot of 2022 year ahead of us. I'm hopeful that we could use some of this ARPA money in 2022, not just 23 and 24. We need to get our people up to date here a little bit,
For the wage aspect of it?
or wage aspect of
Okay.
it. And to follow up on what Robert said a little bit ago about our capital reserve fund, we cut that probably about in half of what staff had hoped for. I think we need to be cautious not to. We need to keep that fund working, so it is a usable fund.
Well, the final comment I'm going to make about budget is, because there's no question, whether it be caused by the pandemic or whether it be caused by just good, solid business practices, you have to evaluate whether all the positions need to be filled. However, what I get many calls on, and my road isn't graded quite properly, and so if we, and I'm just throwing numbers in the air here for a second, but if we've got 10 road graders, the equipment's sitting there and we've only got 5 people to operate them, how are we going to maintain that? So that's why I kept using the phrase earlier, are we providing the services that they expect to the highest level of expectation? So, you know, and whether it be an EMS person or, you know, if we can staff 3 ambulances, and are we staffing them properly? So in some cases, it can be what Bob mentioned, maybe somebody working a few extra hours and not needing to hire another person for that particular job. In some cases, there's going to be a need for another person because we can't get the job done without that other person being here. So I think you're hearing that from us loud and clear, and that people are the important priority from a budgeting standpoint. So I appreciate, and one final comment on the outside agencies. I wanted the discussion about outside agencies to happen briefly before Dory starts giving out notices for timelines. That's not what reset our schedule for hearing those outside agencies, and this is one thing I want to get a consensus on. But the reason that Robert or Dory, somebody sent out a thing, we're going to cancel that for the 18th and the 23rd or whatever those dates were, is because one of the suggestions that was thrown out is if we want to continue hearing from those outside agencies with budgets to consider, do we want to do that in one day, you know, and do that as part of and an extension of a meeting, or because the suggestion was from administration to do it in 2 different meeting days. So that's why that was put on hold briefly, not out of a lack of interest, but just out of a lack of knowledge from the rest of the board on how would you like to handle those outside agencies if we invite them, or when we invite them to come in. So I'm open to suggestions and ideas about that as well. Yeah.
So I will say, in speaking with some of the outside agencies, just from a scheduling standpoint, I think they appreciate sometimes having those 2-day options, because the one day may not always work for them. So something to consider.
And I mean, as far as a deadline for us to hear from them, we really can do that into June, early June, if we needed to, correct?
Yes, into early June, yeah.
I would suggest just scheduling them for a longer commission day, you know, whether it be 1 commission meeting or 2 commission meetings. That way, you know, on my schedule, I block out Mondays, and it pretty well takes up the day, so why not?
And not on an off Monday,
Yeah,
is what he's saying.
Yeah, not on an extra day.
And we can always get people in on a subsequent meeting if they absolutely can't make that one.
Yeah,
meeting
that'd
so.
be my vote.
Does everybody concur that having, whether we have them as 1 meeting day or 2 meeting days or whatever, but it should be on a meeting day that may go longer than normal? Is that the consensus of the group?
Game in any direction.
Let's do that so that we can limit the number of extra days from our schedules, if you will.
So do you want to set those for June 6th?
Well, we can do them in May. I mean,
May 16th or June 6th?
well, I think we need to have one earlier part of May or 16th, and then maybe a subsequent one early June, so that there can be that second alternative for scheduling conflicts or
Okay,
something.
so May 16th, we'll plan for that day for the outside agency presentations to the board.
Okay? And that'll be one that, I believe I've got Larry chairing anyhow, so. I'm giving you one, I'm giving you one in April and one in May, Larry, but I'll have to look at those dates. But May 16th, is that the right date?
Yes.
Is that a Monday? Okay, okay. May 16th, outside, okay. All right, well, let's, we've kind of segued into the ARPA discussion that I'd like to have today, and I've got two specific things I want to bring to your consideration, but refresh our memory where we are with regard to the ARPA funds, because we have committed X dollars out of Y dollars, if you will, of those ARPA funds. Oh, my goodness, Jeff is here.
Familiar looking face.
We've seen him before.
Looks
So,
like,
give us a quick summary, the Cliff Notes version of what we were allowed, what we've committed, and then if I recall, there's what is that, 10 million rule, or not rule?
The standard allowance.
Yeah, so you want to turn it over to Jeff then for a little bit, Robert, or do you want to make a comment or two first?
I can provide you at least where we're at so far, and then let Jeff take it from there. Good morning, Jeff, by the way.
Good morning.
The county, once again, was awarded just under $7.1 million, $7,083,287. We received back in June last year half of that, $3,541,643.50.
repeat that again, please.
We received half of it, which is $3,541,643.50. And we received that back in mid-June of last year. By that agreement with the county, that when we signed with the feds, we would be allowed to receive the second half no earlier than June of this year. We signed an agreement with iParametrics. Year to date, I believe we paid just a little over just under $8,400 to iParametrics to help us navigate the federal laws and regulations associated with those dollars. Additionally, the commission, by way of example, actually it was in December, authorized up to $3.5 million for sewer improvements of your 10 lift stations, which we are in the process of assessing and going out for proposals on those improvements for the three districts. Additional to that, you authorized $225,000 for workforce development from GCC, and that has been, they've signed off on the agreement, and that's been paid off. And then we do have appropriated $600,000 for the child care efforts. I think we're still waiting on an agreement to be signed off on that, so we can cut that check as well. So, in a nutshell, you have approximately $4,325,000 that have either been expended or appropriated, leaving approximately $2,750,000 still remaining. So, when the Treasury came out with their final ruling, believe it was in February, I believe, is that correct? As I'm glancing at Jeff, and I don't know whether he tells it.
It was approved in January. Their final reporting guidance was in February.
Okay. And that then, that then would allow the county to accept up to $10 million, which we received just under 7.1 million, as standard allowance. Is that correct, Jeff?
Correct.
Now, I don't believe the commission has, in essence, formally motioned to utilize that or accept that plan as a standard allowance, and to my knowledge, I think they have to. Is that correct?
You don't have to, but it would be recommended. I would recommend that you do it before we do the report this month that's due April 30th.
And what that allows then is the county to utilize the funding with a little bit less restrictions on what you're using it for. You still have to go through the federal guidelines and everything, the reporting aspect of it, but it allows you a little bit more variability to utilize those fundings. And that's in essence, when we talked a little bit more about potentially utilizing some of that ARPA funding as we take it in to maybe bolster some wages. So, Jeff, do you have any other updates for us on that?
No, only that the final rule did go live on Friday, April 1st. And once, as Robert said, the standard allowance allows us a great deal of flexibility, before, to do what needs to be done on the county level. The wage bolstering, obviously we have the sewer funding and hearing your budget discussion just now. And then even if we have to think about, some other infrastructure that's possible as well. By doing the standard allowance, that's possible. We just always have to make sure to comply with 2 CFR Part 200. That's the only thing that really continues on is the uniform guideline requirements. So that's an important caveat.
I think one of the things, Jeff, this is Lon, that needs to really be clarified, not only for us, but for people out in the listening world that are listening and watching us. I keep calling it the $10 million rule because I can't ever think of the exact language. Doesn't necessarily get any more money to the county, but it allows us more flexibility or permits us more flexibility on what those funds are used for. Am I correct in that brief summary?
100%. So think about it. It was any community could spend up to $10 million, even if it's your whole allocation, on this standard allowance, very similar to your standard deduction on your own personal taxes. It's the same kind of mentality. So the standard allowance is for revenue loss. And once you document revenue loss, and I'll use air quotes, it allows you that flexibility to do it on any government service that's necessary. Because they looked at it as a response to the pandemic and some of the inflationary challenges that you were talking about previously as well.
Yeah, okay. So are there questions to Robert or to Jeff as far as where we started, where we are, the final rules are in place, the 10 million standard allowance, I think is what you call that, if I'm hearing you right. Questions from the rest of you at this point? Okay. And we don't have to make final decisions about some of this for a year or two. Is that correct? Other than what we've committed?
Correct. You have until December 31st of 2024 to obligate your dollars. And you have until December 31st of 2026 to spend down your dollars. So, the only word of caution that I'll throw in there is that, if you're going to obligate something by the end of 24. So for example, I'll use some of the wages that were just being discussed for the budget. I wouldn't recommend to you to budget anything past the end of 2024 because those positions, people may change and you may have to redo those funding. But I would recommend pulling that money in as the standard allowance, and using it in the next couple of years to really define what you need to do. And there are many clients that we have that are actually holding some of those dollars as a strategic reserve because you don't know, what things may come. They're making plans like you all have for the sewers, the early learning network, Garden City, and potentially addressing other short-term issues. And they're also leaving a little bit in reserve because things may change or a new problem that we didn't anticipate comes up.
Okay. Well, I had mentioned earlier, and I'm assuming you heard our budget conversation just a few minutes ago, but one of the things I wanted to throw out to this board, not for a decision to make or to be made today, but just for consideration or thoughts. At our fairgrounds, we've talked about our exhibition building being the shelter that we need for our county, and that it's not a 365-day type of shelter. If we have a tornado in August or something, it's not a very comfortable place for shelter. I have been visiting with a group, and Robert's been in on the conversation, as well as Economic Development Chamber, the schools, CVB and so forth here recently, and our subject is about convention conference space, but in that discussion, there is a consensus of that small group that we need to do something with the exhibition building to make sure it is a comfortable shelter. Now, we may not want to do anything more with it from a convention standpoint or anything, but from a shelter standpoint. And in one of our meetings that we had, I think it was Dwayne that threw out the thought, which is a very viable thought, before we do anything with that exhibition building, we need to have some type of a feasibility analysis on whether the structure can even handle any upgrade to make it a more viable shelter for our community members or anybody in the community. So I wanted to throw that out as an idea on whether that should even be pursued, even though we don't have to make a decision right away, but should we be thinking about, should we ask staff to look into the feasibility of whether or not that exhibition building could be upgraded to be our shelter, be a more beneficial shelter in our county. So I want to throw that subject on the table for discussion briefly. Larry, I'm going to start with you again.
I've got a question for Jeff. Now, this is off your exhibition building discussion.
That's okay. That's all right.
But, they passed a infrastructure bill. Are you seeing those monies yet?
Yeah, I can actually send an update to you all that has where some of those pieces are. We are seeing some of those dollars. Some of them are, third and fourth quarter this year and planned on next year. So they've generally focused on, large mega. So the ones that's out there right now, Commissioner, there's a mega grant, which I think is looking for big systems, like the Gateway Tunnel that they talk about between New York and New Jersey. So they're looking for big mega projects. There is
system.
So, we can think about, some of those as they're coming, and I'll certainly get that piece out to you later today. I'll send it through Robert.
But there is a possibility that some of that money may go to local government or not.
Yes, there is. There's a number of competitive grants. One of the things that, there's some Vision Zero planning in terms of roadways, sidewalks, those types of things that'll be occurring in the third quarter. So there's additional grant monies that are out there.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Well, and kind of tied to that, and I also am kind of getting off of the exhibition building question, but I would like to get a feel for whether or not we should even enter any kind of a analysis of that building, regardless of whether we make improvements to it or not. And I'll come back to that in a second. But I had told the group earlier, Jeff, that this District 1 Commissioner email, well, it's not really a chat thing. I started to say chat, but one of the counties, for example, said they're upgrading electric, heat and air in the courthouse and purchasing some road equipment. So to Larry's question, do you see those kinds of things as far as what we might be able to use the infrastructure funding for? Or should we be, if those are things that we're thinking about, should we be thinking in terms of ARPA funds?
So you can definitely think in terms of ARPA funds, you know, because the electric upgrades and some of those pieces, the courthouse are probably not going to get. In the infrastructure bill, there could be a possibility for some of the road equipment. I'd have to just double check and can have staff take a review of that. But you know, it is something that to think about with ARPA funds as well.
But the infrastructure that Larry's asking about would be more like water system, sewer system, roads, maybe of that kind of thing?
Not maybe, roads, definitely.
Yeah.
They want to do a lot. It's, you know, the infrastructure bill that was a lot about hard infrastructure, you know, and roads, bridges, those types of things.
So back to my question then to the fellow commissioners, is there any appetite for instructing staff to do a structural analysis on upgrading the exhibition building? No commitment to upgrade it, but allocating some of the ARPA funds in order to find out whether that structure should even be considered for a shelter in the future, or we don't even worry about that. Yeah, Bob,
I think
go ahead.
you have to be worried if you're going to call it a shelter, and you mentioned tornado in the same thing. It's a metal building. It's kind of like a great big mobile home. It's almost like a Target.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I guess I would have a hard time with that. Now, trying to make it more usable, friendly for events, you know, that's a different question. But I would be nervous if we called it a shelter and we put a whole bunch of people in there, and then there was a tornado, and then people would come back and say, wait a minute, you know, what did you do to us? You asked us to come there, and then we had this building. So I think if we're looking for other purposes to use that building, exhibition, events, that's one thing, but I would be very, very nervous about calling it a shelter.
Robert?
Just for clarification, the shelter aspect of it is after an event, not a, to brace yourself for an event. I've done several retrofits of metal buildings where they go up structurally and weld in braces to assure it meets some wind standard, so that it can be utilized then for, in fact, as a shelter, but it is not in any way, shape, or form deemed a tornado shelter or anything like that. And actually, one of the facilities that I had worked with and on was a combination EMS facility, EOC, and then within that we had safe rooms for utilization of those people if, for example, if reoccurrence of a tornado or something like that. And but first and foremost, the very first thing we did and had an engineer come in and do a structural analysis of that facility, so that we're not, so to speak, throwing good money after bad.
And I probably shouldn't have used the word tornado, because disaster is a better word, a disaster shelter, because I'm thinking of the blizzard that might happen, or we've had a number of fires. Jeff probably isn't aware of this, but we had one close to us to the west just recently. You know, if there's a massive fire like there was up in Ellis County not long ago, and people are out of their homes and that kind of thing. So disaster shelter is probably a better word, and I was just using that example. But I appreciate what Bob's saying too.
Robert summed up exactly what I've been promoting. We do need some kind of engineer structural analysis on that building before we throw a whole bunch more money at it. I mean, it's just common sense. It's an old building. Screws do fall out. Things come loose. We just need to make sure it's worth We need another bucket full of money in it.
And just to add to that, and you would be interested in exploring the use of some ARPA funds in order to get that study done?
I would.
Okay. Dave?
I wouldn't spend much money studying, because the first thing you're gonna find is a need for showers. You have no kitchen facilities and so on for the, we went down that shelter path before in my career as a county employee. So, and the building's now about 25 years older, so I would say, yeah, take a look at it structurally.
I'm referring to the structure itself, the roof, the sidewalls.
But I'm saying, yeah, don't spend a whole lot of money on it. So I wouldn't fuss about spending a little.
Well, without totally defining the scope of the analysis, would the other two commissioners be in favor of exploring that as far as whether that structure should be, I'm trying to think of the right term, fitted for some use going forward, or whether that structure should be eliminated from any thought process in the future?
I think you need to define exactly what your proposed use is gonna be first.
Well, that's why, yeah.
As far as a structure after a disaster, I have problems with that. And, and I'm kinda like Bob, but, it's a tornado shelter, no, it's not, won't qualify for that at all. But, I think if you're looking at wanting to build a convention use facility, then have somebody that does that and have them, here's what we need, here's what we think we need.
Well, that was going to be, that was going to be another part of my report today.
Come in
but-
and analyze the structure.
That was going to be another part of my report today, because that wasn't necessarily an ask about whether we should consider any ARPA funds for analyzing this building, because this group that I referenced has said we need to have a feasibility analysis done with regard to what can enhance our regional draw from a convention, conference, and so forth. And that process has started with two of the organizations agreeing to try to put together what that might look like as far as an RFP or RFQ or, whatever. So that piece of it is being done, but very specifically to county projects, whether or not this structure is one that can even be used for anything going forward for the next 25 years is kind of where I was going with that question. So are we interested in having Robert explore what it might cost to have an analysis like that? And if we find it's reasonable, to do that with ARPA funds?
Answer your question, yes. Go ahead.
And you said yes.
Yeah, I think it's important, though, to go beyond structural. If you're gonna make it viable, we've gotta be able to air condition it. And, so in other words, whatever it's gonna take to make it usable. And I agree with Dwayne 100%. Let's make sure that when we get it all finished, the roof doesn't leak.
No, I get that, yeah.
You think
Okay.
it's gonna rain sometime?
Well,
Oh, that's right, Dwayne asked for rain.
when he gets ready to plant, it's gonna be raining, and he's gonna say it's too muddy to plant, so, yeah. Jeff, anything you think? Anything you think we're missing here in this discussion? And we'll turn it to Robert and you to discuss on whether or not we can find someone to do an analysis for us.
No, commissioners, I think you're looking at the needs of the county, and that's your primary concern. And that's what these funds, there's a reason you got them directly on the local level. You're looking at what you need and figuring out ways that we can address it. We can also, I just want to confirm too, given your earlier budget discussion about salaries, that, we'll work with Robert to kind of create a plan on that as well, using some of the ARPA funds.
Good point, yeah. Yeah, whether we accept it or reject it, yes, we need to have something to shoot arrows at for sure, so. Jeff, thank you very much. We appreciate you participating today. And Robert, you feel like you've got enough direction from us, both budget and ARPA wise?
Yes, I can work with Kurt on that facility down there and look at
All right.
structural analysis on that.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeff. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too.
Yep. Well, that's what I wanted to include under board governance, because again, how the ARPA funds are used is part of our governance, how we budget and the guidance we give to staff is part of our governance. So I truly do, as chair this year, appreciate the discussion that we've had here over the last few minutes. In your packet were the upcoming meetings and events that were not only that one list of meetings going on, but also there were like 2 or 3 pages of community events, and hopefully we can participate as individual commissioners in as many of those things as possible. Bob probably wants to be in the golf championship event, so but no, seriously, I hope we can. And then the one thing I see on the screen right now is the Beef Empire Days appears to be back in full force this year, and Bonita is I can't think of her last name right now, but yeah, that's it. Is coordinate Beef Empire Days and appears to be doing a great job outlining events and so forth. And that's one of our signature events in Finney County is Beef Empire Days. So let's head into the county commissioner report and the counselor's report. Robert, you first.
Well, as you can tell from today's conversation, most of my time is hammered with budget, working with Dory on follow-up on the audit and so forth, so we can get that finalized. ARPA funding, as you heard Jeff, we do have a report that's due out this month that we'll be ramping up to get everything lined up. Just by way of comment here is that you have a annual meeting for Chamber of Commerce, that award banquet coming up. Did receive some tickets for that. That's April 21st this month. Need to see who all's attending that. And I believe also Dory may have secured a second table for that. Is that correct?
I did, yeah, in support of the library attendance.
So just need to figure out who all's going to be attending that, as well as Commissioner Pishney pointed out. We had a discussion with a group of representatives from school, city, chamber, CVB, so on and so forth, on enhancing our existence as a regional draw, and that included the conversation on a events facility and what that might look like, and host of other things. So that concludes mine.
Any questions to Robert? Comments?
Robert,
Go ahead, Bob.
on wages and salaries, budget-wise, on an annual basis, we're looking at $2 million as an example, laying here in the ARPA funds. How big of an impact if we had $1 million to allocate that way for the 2022-23 year? Is that a 2% impact? How much of an impact is that on the amount of wages you currently have?
Well, I'll probably answer it a little bit differently than what you're anticipating, but as we go through the assessment of the position descriptions, and then within each one of those disciplines, whether it is a nurse, a equipment operator 1, 2, or 3, a law enforcement officer, so forth, we are matching then, we are looking at then that increase to get them competitive. We're not going to be leading edge, but we want to offer a competitive salary. So one particular area may be a $2 or $3 increase, and another one may be a $1 increase. So, but any, in short, I think any contribution from the ARPA funds will help bolster that increase in. I can't
But you
give you.
can't give me currently, we're paying $10 million in salaries and wages.
Not right off the cuff. I don't know exactly what our payroll is on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you.
But that is a question that can be answered in the future, yeah. Go ahead, Linda.
I'll start with the tax sale, just to let you know, we're working on getting, resending letters that we can send out that have been returned for lack of a good address. So if you've changed your address, if any of the taxpayers have changed their address, just make sure those are up to date and current with the county. And then additionally, I've been fielding a lot of calls with regard to that. Just a reminder that in order to pay or to get that number, the phone call should be directed to the treasurer's office. However, I do need to know if the proposed properties are, for instance, subject to a probate action or something like that. I did get one call from one attorney in the area with regard to one of those properties, just to let me know that it was going to be up for sale. So we don't have to include that, and we're kind of, you know what I mean? Just if there are special circumstances with regard to properties that have outstanding taxes from tax year 2018 or prior, I do need to know that information. Additionally, this next, before the next commission meeting, of course, we're continuing to work on Northwest Industrial District. Will have that resolution for you to finalize on that, ideally, if the Northwest Industrial District ultimately votes to dissolve as well. We did get a proposed tentative interlocal agreement from the city with regard to that Northwest Industrial District. So that should be in place, so we can keep moving on those things pretty quick once all that's taken care of. And then, of course, the developers agreement with the TIF district for the Western Corridor. We're working on that as well.
Just going to keep going around the table. Larry?
Let's see, had a KLPG call on Fridays. I encourage all of you to listen to those. They're interesting, and you can kind of get it up to date. There's a lot going on in Topeka. Looks to me like they haven't. One of the comments was that the governor has bought lots of pens, and so expect lots of vetoes.
There will be some, yeah.
So it will be probably be a long session. Also, had an economic development, met with a prospective client for breakfast. I wasn't able to attend the whole day meeting, but it sounds like it went very well. It'll be an interesting group.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, that's all I've got to report. Oh, the next Friday call is not till the 29th because of the legislature being out in the veto session. So
Maybe we pose a question to Larry.
Larry,
Maybe.
do you take questions after your comments?
Oh,
No.
I just wondered, in that KLPG, has there been any information about the proposal to exempt property tax for those old folks that are over 65? That was moving along.
There are so many tax proposals about exemptions. If you started jotting them all down as he was reading them off, you'd have writer's cramp.
It kind of sounded like that.
Anything from food to gambling to whatever you want, they're considering it this year, sounds like.
Having a birthday upcoming, I was very interested in that.
You were just wanting to adjust the age limit so that it didn't impact everybody.
Logan, he's looking out for his heirs.
I had a very good session with Compass. Again, they kind of got hooked in as a lot of what I heard you in the last couple of years on health insurance. They were in a captive type group, and it kind of folded, and they're being hung with a rather significant piece of money. Fortunately, they were somewhat forward-thinking, and it saved some of their premium dollars that they had accumulated, and I think that'll work. Had a very good interplay with the sheriff's department and Centura. We talked enough about it earlier. But I really believe the sheriff's department has done a good job of formalizing what it is that they need and expect out of these side contracts. So hopefully as they talk to these other people and formalize, and whether Centura says yes or no. But I was also impressed from Centura's side. We had the chief financial officer, chief operating officer, we had the head of all of their clinical services, the head of all of their nursing staff, and we had 4 of them very deeply involved through about an hour-long meeting. So it was very well attended, and I think their questions were good. I did stress with them that if they were leaning not to do something, to please tell us as early as possible so we don't compound time with whatever else. So that's really what I had.
Okay, Bob. Dwayne.
Only meeting I attended was the Great Plains Development discussions, a couple of very successful projects that have come before us, and it was good to see. But there was also quite a discussion on some of the delinquent projects that they're working on, trying to collect.
Dave?
I didn't have much to offer except a library board meeting. I'm going to elaborate on a couple things. They happen to be nominated by the Chamber of Commerce to be one of those enterprises recognized at the Chamber banquet. That caused me to ask in their behalf for some table space, if you will. So I have been instructed, Robert, by our county clerk that I will attend that banquet this year, regardless of whether I wanted to or not, but I want to. So I'll talk you out of one ticket. One little side report of success at the library. Yeah, there we go. Apparently the library board ex officio member by the name of Larry Jones asked about getting participation with Holcomb kids at the library. And so they were proud to report that they had about 40 of the young folks, I think first and second graders from Holcomb, come over, and they split them in half, and half of them went to Dorothy's room and had stories read to them, and the other half to crafts, and then made a switch. But the point was some real satisfaction in reaching out just here locally to some folks that are taxpayers supporting that facility. That said, now I have a question. I've asked this before, but before it gets away, we some time ago, and by consensus, agreed to rename or to name and honor a building for Russ Jennings. And I'm of the opinion that maybe we need to move on that before Russ Jennings is forgotten about. I mean, my goodness.
We had our last regional juvenile justice meeting. Beth was looking into that.
Well, can't we get an answer on that? And
We've got a meeting coming up Wednesday, yeah.
Okay. I don't mean to be impatient, but it's been a while. So anyway.
You are impatient.
Yeah, I am impatient, so getting older.
The building's not going anywhere.
Okay, all right, thanks, folks.
Neither is Russ. Sorry.
Well, and I'm not saying that we did it, that there was anything intentional, but I think it was good that they did the recognition in Topeka, and now it's our turn to do the recognition locally. And so, yeah, I agree with Dave. I think it's time to take some action, and hopefully they have had a chance to reach out with Judy and the family and make sure that's okay. But I think the steps are coming into place in the right order, where Topeka took action, we're taking action, so forth. Just a couple things. I too was on that business prospect visit with Larry, and a very interesting project with that. I did attend the Economic Development Commission board meeting the other day, and I think I reported to you before that following their meeting this month on the 27th, they will adjourn and convene into their retreat, their annual retreat. So anybody is welcome to come, and hopefully, I told Robert and Dory the other day, I won't be able to be there because I'm going to be in Salina for that Kansas Association conference, but I hope we have a county presence, staff and or commission at the retreat, because all of the funders for economic development are supposed to be there. That does lead me to, I hope that maybe one or more of you might be able to take part in some of the Kansas County Commission Association meeting. It is in Salina. Last year, I know we had some participation down in Liberal, but it was easy to come and go to that, easier to come and go to that. And then the other thing going forward, I hope that you'll consider the NACO conference, since it's in the Denver area this year, it's within driving distance, because we'd love to have as much representation from Kansas as we can at that NACO conference, and it's in July, I want to say 24th, 5th, somewhere in that latter part of July. So be thinking about those two things. And then the last thing, I want to give you a handout, but I've not only been working with a group with regard to how do we enhance our regional draw with convention conference space, but I've also been concerned for a number of years about our infestation of blackbirds, starlings, and so forth and so on. And so I, through Extension Service and a private business owner, we made was there another one for Robert? Yeah, okay. We made contact through K-State, and then K-State in turn made contact through USDA in Manhattan. And through the Wildlife Services, they have a blackbird program, if you will. And what I've come to find out through this is that in 2005, 2006, that Congress had authorized some federal funds, and we in fact had a person stationed here in Finney County to address that problem with some specific feedlots. The funding went away, so therefore the person went away, and subsequent to that time, the bird problem has returned even worse than it was before. And my personal concern about it is, we're talking about attracting and retaining workforce. How do you do that when the bird stuff is so bad at the hotel when they come to visit that they're turned off and they say, I'm not coming back to this place? We have a private business owner that's close to a motel, and it's killing their trees, it's causing a mess, a noise issue, and so forth. So in February, these USDA guys from Manhattan came out and did a couple of days surveying the situation, and they said, your problem is only going to get worse in Finney County, not any better if you don't do something about it. So I asked them to put it into a report that we could look at and have something to talk about, and I am not asking for any action here today. This is just a report to you. I will ask for some action in the future, and I'll get back to that in just a second. But on the second, on the second page of this report, and I would ask, it's only 3 or 4 pages, I would ask that you take it home and read through it and look at it. But on the first page, he really assesses what the problem is, but on the second page, he gives 3 options. And the business owner and the extension agent who I've been working with, we have concluded that not only are they 3 options, but they really are in that priority order. Option 1 being priority 1, option 2 being priority 2, et cetera. And so he really laid out some ideas on how we might address this to make it a more attractive county for people who are coming to live here and visitors just passing through. And on the last page of the report is his financial assessment of what option 1 would cost for 1 year. And I'm definitely in favor of private-public partnerships. Whatever we want to do, but where I plan to go with this going forward is we do have a couple of private people who are willing to be a funder. They call them in the USDA world, wildlife services, they call them cooperators, but they equate funding to the amount of service. So if you give 50% of the funding, 50% of the service is going to be dedicated to you. So I want to be careful that we don't ask, one group and then we haven't really taken care of the problem for the county or the issue for the county. So I have spoken with the mayor. I am going to go to a city commission meeting in the next week or so, not to ask for funds initially, but just to report to them what this conversation's been about. Same way here with this board. I just wanted you to be aware of what I've been doing, what the interest is, and we have business owners, hoteliers particularly, who are interested in trying to alleviate this problem. And so just keep it on your radar. And as I say, I'll get back to you. But know that there's a cost with the first option, but the first option is also the best option. And as the USDA representative who wrote this report has reminded me several times, this is not a short-term fix. If you have somebody come in for a year and expect it to be fixed, that's not a realistic expectation. It's an ongoing process. But he also said several times to the business owner and myself, if we don't start addressing it now, it's only going to become worse going forward. So that's another task force or little group that I've convened to see if we can address an issue, in my eyes, that's a detraction from people visiting and living in our county. Like I said, informational piece today, but any questions or, okay. All right, we'll be back to you about that, but I wanted you to see the report that he very succinctly put together after their visit out here. And they were more than willing to come out and assess the situation. So I was really pleased with the cooperation. And our extension agent did a great job of coordinating the whole thing for us. Okay, Commissioner reports. So the last thing that I have on the agenda for today is I am asking for your agreement to go into executive session and for the purpose of non-elected personnel for a period of time, initially at least, up to 30 minutes, which would be reconvening about 12:15. And that executive session would include us, commissioners, would include Linda as our counselor, and Robert as our administrator, and Susan as our county attorney, and Kathleen Abel, yeah, sorry. Abel as a county attorney staff member. So, and
Take a pit stop on the way to that.
well, I guess we could say we'll reconvene at 12:20, but so we'll have about a 5-minute break in between. So, but that's what I would like to ask for permission through motion today.
I'll offer the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and we'll start the session about 10 till and reconvene no later than 20 after. And is there a second? Seconded by Larry. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes. So we'll take a few minutes, and then are we using office where we have been meeting? Yeah, okay.
Tiny die.